Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Good evening and welcome to the Friday night edition of Spaced Out Radio. Tonight, my name is Dave Scott. We always love coming to you live. As tonight, we're talking about UFOs and cryptids over Texas. Daniel Allen Jones will be our guest here momentarily, and we are going to have a great night with him. So stay tuned as it's all going to come at you. Let's say hello to each and every one of you, including Race Fan in the gold medal position, Richard Minnick with a silver, and SJ with a bronze medal tonight. There's Michael Morris, our attorney at large, and Kitty Caddywhack, Road Flare, Robert Lamoth. Good to see you all. Tim Mothman and his goatee. Nice to see you. Hope you're having a good time tonight. We're having some troubles with Twitch tonight connecting. So if you're on Twitch, might get screwed tonight. I don't know. All right. Cypher75, good to have you back. Ethanol. B.A. Baracus is here. B.A. Baracus will be signing autographs after the show. Line up to the left of the studio, if you don't mind, to the left of the studio. Stephanie Kenny Blankenship, Les Paul Holland, Mama Catherine. I hope you're doing well. I just got your text message. I haven't read it yet, but I will momentarily. Gory Tiger, how are you? Deanna Ann, how you been? Nice to see you. As we continue on with our roll call, there's Frankie B. Good to see you, my man. Beverly Beatty, how are you tonight? Hope you're having a good time. And let's see here. Number 14 in your program, starting at right wing tonight from Stockholm, Sweden, Lars Jansson. Search and Destroy, how's it going? Stargazer. The Ferret is back. The Ferret will be signing autographs after the show as well. Line up to the right of the studio, if you don't mind, to the right of the studio. D. Cypher, Marty Burback, Pam Harris, JBD, just another guy named Harry. Good to have you all here. As we continue on with our roll call, there is Glenn John McEnroe, the pride of Wimbledon. Buckethead, the soothsayer. How's it going, my friend? Woo am I? Nice to see you. And let's see, Frequent Awakenings with Jamie. Or is it Jaime? Mrs. Posterity. So I'm going to go with Jamie. Unless she goes by a silent J, which would be Yami. Yami? I don't know. Millennium, my man. Good to see you. As we continue on with our roll call, Little Cam on YouTube is here. Yep, he ran 184 laps around a track to warm up for tonight's show. Did it in record time, too. And there's Caged on the inside. Good to see you. Walter Kochabinski, thanks for coming on in. Jay Mufon, how you doing? As we continue on with roll call, Human Carl is here, a great veteran of the United States Air Force. Thank you for your service, Human Carl. Appreciate you doing that. Spiraling 69, thanks for coming on in the studio. Captain K-Rod, Flat 6. F.U. Zaddy, how you doing, buddy? And who is next here? Bombshell Bomber, nice to have you here. Roll calling on down. Oob to Joe's Main, you've got cryptids. Super Crazy, Mark Matthews, welcome to SOR Chat. And 11, 12, 13, 14 is here. And let's see, who else do we have here? Let's scroll on down. Christine Lynn, thank you for joining us. Chester, welcome to SOR Chat. Very much appreciate you stopping on in. John Lamb, thank you for joining us. 1 second here. I got to say hi to Mama Catherine. There she is. And who else here? And yes. All right, let's get the radio side going. Hello and welcome to the radio and podcast side of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott, and tonight we are talking with Daniel Allen Jones, cryptids and UFOs in Texas. He's chasing everything down. Yeah, carries a big stick with him just in case he's got to swat one of them big feet on the hands. That's true. Not even messing around. We are in roll call on our YouTube side right now as we say hello to Miss Tessa Marie. How are you? And who is next here? Dave Tiger Williams. He's always ready to drop the gloves. Mr. Catfish, how you doing? Conversations with Spirit, Lenda, and thank you for coming on in. There's Kende. Good to have you here. Thank you very much, Beverly, for kicking off the super chat tonight. Very much appreciate your love and support of SOR. It's a good Canadian super chat, which is about $6 American, you know, and what else can I tell you? Yeah, we do not have ugly swag at our store, so go buy some. Throw those horns up, everybody. Let's rock. From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out the bubblefoot, beat the news wire, check out our swag as well. You can follow us on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio, X at Spaced Out Radio, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. We're heading down to Texas tonight to learn about cryptids and UFOs. Our guest, Daniel Allen Jones, is here, and we're going to have a great night with him on the radio for the next 2 hours. Then in hour number 3, we got Swampy in to kick things off with another spooky story. Follow that up. Jackie Harmon will be here with the Cryptid Report. All right. You know, I first asked Daniel about a year and a half ago to come on the show. And he's like, you're Canadian. I don't want to do that. You have an accent. And, you know, you guys talk weird up there. And I'm in Texas in the Lone Star State. And I know how to drink beer and wrestle cattle. I said, yeah, but I know how to drive in snow. You don't. And so we had this there and back for about a year and a half. Pure insults. It was terrible. It really was. But finally, like a good fisherman that we are, I sent in Dirty Filth, my booking coordinator, threw a worm on a hook, put it in the Texas water, and bam, we got him. We got him good, and here he is tonight. I'm really looking forward to this one. Daniel Allen Jones is a native Texan and professional drummer, as well as a private music instructor at the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. Daniel has been researching mysterious phenomena for over a decade. He's visited strange sites, conducted numerous interviews, and provided media coverage for several events. He's an investigative reporter for the Vortex, a show that explores the mysteries of the world and beyond. Daniel also focuses on the field of ufology and cryptozoology, and its study in cultural anthropology, and manages multiple community organizations. This guy's into everything. You know, he really is into everything. And this is why I want to get him on, because these are the type of researchers we'd like to have on Spaced Out Radio. Daniel Allen Jones, it's been a while. Thanks for biting the hook and finally joining us here, my man. How are you?
Howdy, Dave. It's great to finally be on here with you. I know it's been a tough journey, but you got me. Here we are, and it's great to have everyone along with the journey. I'm excited to be here.
it is a fun journey. I like the way you put that. No, not many people use the fact that this is a journey. It's an experience and just an absolute rush to be saying that you're a monster hunter. What does that feel like, my man?
Well, I think that, it's really interesting to see that alongside what I have as a very mundane and normal profession, that it's great to be able to explore things that are of interest to us. And if that's a pursuit of passion or labor of love or whatever it might be that really inspires us, that we can do something to invest in that. And for me, that's really interesting stories of weird and strange encounters, urban legends or lore, and things that really kind of fall into either the fringe or folklore or historical basis of reality in a way that many people may not really know about. And I think that looking into those things, at least within my own area here in Texas, has been an incredible journey, as we mentioned. And I think that being that it's accessible to me locally, geographically, I don't see why people don't take the opportunity to get out and explore their area and see what they can get into. And so that's what I've spent some time doing, and it's been a lot of fun and very insightful and very much driving my curiosity along the way.
For many people getting into this field, they are brought into it because of an experience of seeing something or experiencing something they cannot explain, and it's like the itch you can't scratch. For you, how did this journey begin?
That's an excellent question. I think that it's important to see that many people do come, as you mentioned, into a lot of these circles of people, communities, and in many ways, what feels like family for a lot of us, in a way that it was an incident or it was not necessarily, intended upon. It was sort of inadvertently, for many people, happenstance that something occurred that brought them into a community of people. For myself, I don't really claim to have had an experience that projected or propelled me into the fascination of people into UFOs or people into Bigfoot or anything like this so much. So I don't really have a claim of an encounter so much as it is looking into things that in my local area at the time caught my attention. And so a big part of that wasn't really just a singular event, but a combination or a series of things that took place in my own life that allowed me to see that there's a greater part and really being involved with a lot of this stuff in a way that, more than maybe the casual enthusiast or person who maybe hears about something on the news or on television. And so for me, a big part for that and my involvement to be really initiated into all of this was, one, there was a major UFO incident in my area or near my area soon after I was out of high school in 2008. And this was in Stephenville, Texas, and this became national news, but it was also something that, it sounded interesting. And I grew up with a fascination for otherworldly mysteries and ideas of alien life, and everything that we see in media and pop culture was already something I, enjoyed. But in a way that was tangible to me, I realized that this place that they're talking about on the news with this major UFO sighting in Stephenville, Texas, is basically like within an hour from me. And it drove my curiosity to find out if there's, more to it. There's something, tangible that I could go and look into. And that led me into meeting a few people, but it wasn't just a matter of finding them. It really was a series of other interests. And in doing so, I was gathering literature and books and reading information, watching things online. And I was interested in a number of different topics, and not just UFOs, but that was really interesting to me as well. But it was when I started to read some literature and material by several authors, but one notably was the late, great Jim Marrs. And I thought, this guy really is doing a great job of journaling with integrity and covering challenging topics that he was daring to pursue that many other people probably wouldn't want to try to, put their reputation on the line for. And I thought that was really admirable. And I started to look into what he had going on online, specifically Facebook, and found that he had a meeting coming up that he was going to give a presentation to in the Dallas area in 2010. And so I thought, that's close, I'm in the area, I'm going to go check it out. And I got involved with a group that Jim Marrs was a part of, along with Ken Cherry, who was the former state director of MUFON and was the main person involved with the investigation and sort of media outreach with the whole Stephenville incident. And it just happened to be a really interesting circumstance where I came to the meeting and found out at this time it wasn't MUFON, but that many of the people who were involved with this group had been part of that organization at the time of those investigations and the media coverage. And so I found myself really in an interesting situation that allowed me to not only get involved with the group, but to make connections and network with other people who are interested and involved with a number of different subjects, because at the time the group was called EPIC, which is an acronym for Extraordinary Phenomena Investigations Council. And that was spearheaded by Ken Cherry, who I got to work with along with Jim Mars. And this was similar to what MUFON is as far as an investigative organization, but not only for UFOs, but for other ideas of cryptozoology, of things like shamanism, of parapsychology, and a number of different interesting mystery subjects. And I thought that was really kind of right up my alley. And it was great to be able to connect in a social way with people that I felt were like-minded, and it helped me to gain a sense of perspective on not just the idea of these fields of study, which I think is where it comes to be that people find that, there's an interest in studying these subjects, but there's also a community, a culture or subculture that really helps to provide some sustenance to what people can garner their attention with, whether that's different things like what you're doing, which is very commendable. You're doing a lot of work to help provide coverage from many perspectives. And there are people who put time into doing all kinds of different things with multimedia to help make many of these subjects tangible and accessible to the common person that otherwise wouldn't know that these things are accessible. So in all of that, I would just say that the UFO incident that really kind of caught my attention, falling into being able to kind of become close with people like Ken Cherry and especially Jim Mars, who I got to work closely with as well, until he passed, which has now been over 7 years ago. But it's incredible to see sort of where a lot of those connections have allowed me to develop my own direction of involvement with any of these things. And I've found that my interest lies not only in finding that the many different types of phenomena are fascinating, but the communities involved with all of these different topics are equally as fascinating. And so I've spent time in these different ways to do what I can to document and report on these different subjects. And so whether that's going out to various locations, interviewing people, as you mentioned, or being able to be a part of community events, whether it's small scale like meetings or large scale conferences. And I know that you've actually put together a lot of different events and been a part of a lot of things as well. There's a lot that goes into it. And I just wanted to share my appreciation for you taking the time, not only to do this consistently, but there's a lot of upkeep that people don't know that goes into the back end. And so, hats off to you for sure, Dave, and to everyone who's a part of this whole effort.
You really talk about the good side of this field, and that's rare because so many people have so many complaints and nitpick about everything. For people getting into this field, just like you did, you have to have fun. You have to find the fun in it. We can get caught up in all the drama that you want, whether, Lou Elizondo is an inside agent or he's a psyop or whatever, or he's telling the truth. I mean, you could get into stuff like that, or you could just take the cases, run with it, talk to the experiencers who had an eyewitness account, and just go off the legend and lore and enjoy the story. You've chosen to kind of do that along with looking into the scientific side of things. Why do you choose that fun, uninhibited side rather than just kind of going where ufology seems to be going, which is down a toilet?
Yeah, I think it's a really good thing to address and point out, because it's challenging to know that you can differentiate between the aspects of scientific investigation, which I think is really important, but also that we are people. We are a community of people involved with a particular area of interest that I think a lot of people can feel either passionately or emotionally, whatever it is about. People will have feelings for either way. Aside from how that might affect the idea of facts and all of this stuff, I don't see any reason why things can't be enjoyed and have fun and be able to kind of find a sense of not just enthusiasm, but fulfillment in knowing that, this can be a hobby or it can be a serious pursuit. It can be a matter of knowing that you can enjoy something, but also set yourself apart, objectively speaking, to know that sometimes you can have your own disposition, but that you can also find that there are many ways to have an opportunity to kind of learn from what the other dispositions are. And I think that what I've found is that it's easy for people to, without context, misassociate certain incidents where you might be, next to someone. I've interviewed a number of people that I wouldn't say necessarily just wholeheartedly believe or agree with necessarily, but it doesn't mean that, I think, in my view, that it means that we have to just be guilty by association simply because we appear within the same proximity of one another. I think that it's really important to know that people take the time to make an effort to make this a very serious topic, but also that there's no reason that we can't enjoy the pop culture aspect in a way that we can recognize, yes, that there are things that can in some way tarnish reputation or damage credibility. But at the same time, it's one of those things that, I don't think many people are intentionally doing things. And I think that it's challenging for us as an entire community to all find unity in something other than like people are interested in ideas of mysterious phenomena. And whether that's boiling it down to find the answers, or it's to keep the mystery alive, to find a sense of like a way to feel inspired to have a bit of intrigue in a way that other things in life don't seem as interesting or as exciting. And I think everyone enters into these arenas with a different disposition. And so I have to, in my own way and view of interacting, keep in mind that there will continue to be people who are brand new to all of this. And if there's not a way for them to have a sense of enjoyment and be naive to it all, like we all once were in some way and still are in many ways, I think that we're all constantly learning, and that we might not all have the capacity to dive in the most rigid technical sense, because we're not all scientists. And I love the scientific process and what can be applied, but I will be the first to admit that I'm not a scientist, and I don't attempt to hold myself to the standard of one, because that's not where I'm qualified. And I think that if there's something I personally can do, it's to the best of my ability. I will do what I can as a citizen scientist, but I'm not going to try to fool anyone to present myself as a way that, like, this can't be fun. This should be a really enjoyable subject for anybody, whether it's mysteries of unknown objects, whether it's the mysteries of otherworldly life or non-human intelligence, or strange connections with consciousness and psychic abilities and these ideas of parapsychology, or any of these kind of mysterious topics that people are kind of drawn together, whether it's spiritually, intellectually. All of these things I think can be fulfilling and be fun without only being a sort of a technical, rigid, analytical side of it. But it's good to appreciate both. I think it's important to balance. I'm a musician, so I do that in my regular profession anyways, because music can just be enjoyed, and you can just listen to it and have no understanding, a technical base of knowledge about any of it, and you don't have to know any of that and still enjoy it. At the same time, having that background, I find that I can enjoy it in those ways as well. So I see it in many different kinds of analogies, maybe like that can help to bring a different perspective on why these many topics are not only just a scientific pursuit, but a cultural part of our community as well. And I think it's great to be able to play into that in a way that's it's inviting, inspiring, and it can still drive curiosity.
I want to know, like, the way you approach a case then, as much as you're doing the citizen scientific work with it, do you still get the enjoyment of hearing those firsthand stories, those firsthand encounters? Because for me, I know for me, that's a rush. I would sooner interview somebody who has those firsthand encounters than somebody who's been researching for 10, 15, 20 years, who's going to tell me the exact same thing they're going to tell on every podcast and YouTube channel.
Yeah, I think that it's important to see that without witness testimony, there's very little to work with. And it's thanks to many of those who are willing to come forward with some testimony. And I think that's, again, mentioning that, you can sit with someone and talk with them. You can be on an interview, or you can be in any setting that allows you to interface with someone who does have a claim in a way that many people want things to be true. Many people like things to be more exotic than they actually are sometimes. But many people I find that you talk to, feel sincere about what they're describing, and whether that really happened or not, it's affecting their life, and that can in turn affect a lot of people's lives. And it's interesting how that process affects people in a way that, regardless of the validity of something, it can still change perspective. It can still motivate or inspire something, in a way that maybe can be utilized in a different direction. So I think that it's important to see that when people are willing to open up and share, that we can provide a safe, a supportive network of those, or whatever the medium is, to which they can share and express, and whether that's in a group setting, or that's one-on-one, when people share about whatever their encounter is. And so I think that how I approach that is a little bit different than any kind of historic report that has various ways to kind of source or look into whatever corroborating information. But when people do tell you something that is substantial, like having an experience where they have an encounter, either more than just a sighting, but they feel like they've made contact with something non-human in their own way, whether they perceive it as an abduction. I think it's important to handle that differently than if someone's openly talking about being a contactee, rather than maybe like an abductee, which of course, and many of the people here who are participating would know that, an abductee probably feels much different than those who are more or less feeling open to and welcome to the idea of having interactions with something beyond humanity. And I think that that's important to approach it in a way that, some people are understanding, some people attempt to express or convey to be able to do what they can to understand. But I do think it's important that even if we disagree, I don't have to agree with whatever someone's saying, but I'll hear them out. I think that's important, is at least to be considerate of what they're going to share. And if someone says that they felt like they were taken aboard a craft, or that they had an encounter with something that didn't seem like a normal animal, or was, like Bigfoot or something like that, I think it's important to, rather than scoff and just easily laugh them off. For most people, that's the case. For those who are all interested in this, that's going to drive our curiosity. And that's sometimes going to want us to ask things that might lead them into a certain line of questioning. And so I think it's important to remain objective, and have objectivity with something when you're, doing whatever it is that can be filed as a report, or if you're talking with someone who doesn't want to really make their story well known or something, they want to be able to share it so they find a sense of, confidence in that person, in a way that they are going to open up. And I think depending on what that is, it's okay to have your own sense of judgment or discernment about what they're describing, but you don't necessarily have to put that in a way that's going to affect their ability to share whatever they had happen. And I think that's important, because our external input might influence someone's ability. So I feel like it's important to just listen. And, if in some sense you might find connections independent to what someone says, because if you interject with saying, well, it's something that this person said too, and they might say, oh, well, and it could change a story or whatever it is. And I think that just hearing the consistency of what some people might share without knowing that they're influenced by other information, I think is helpful to establish a really consistent baseline of whatever their encounter or account of something is. And so I find that providing things like the Texas UFO Network or the Texas Cryptozoology Network aren't as much going to be focusing on investigating the cases only, as much as being a network of resources to show that there are people who are interested and can help and can collaborate in ways that might offer maybe not just answers or solutions or things that can be a definitive end all, something that can really help with a person's idea of what they want to find out, but at least show that there are people who are curious to do what they can to work together and tap into the greater community of what is going on. So I find that if people are willing to share a sighting or an encounter or an experience, that they're looking to either find people who are familiar or able to kind of understand, because it's easy for them to feel repelled and then shut off and never want to say anything about it. And you can only imagine, you are very familiar with a lot of the people who have claimed to have close encounters with whether they are perceived as aliens or cryptids, and in doing so, gain notoriety, sometimes unwanted notoriety.
Well, that's Daniel Allen Jones is here, UFOs and cryptids in Texas. When we return, we're we're going to get into Daniel's favorite and most exhausting UFO research project in his hometown. We'll be right back on Spaced Out Radio. Stay tuned, everybody. Nice start, bud. Nice start.
Thanks, man. I'll try to keep everything a little bit more concise.
Oh, that's all right. Hi, First Floor Audio. Hi, Rich, buddy. How you guys doing? And anybody else jump in here that I missed? Jay Truth Seeker, good to see you. Yeah, that's good. We are good right there. Little Timmy James. How you doing, buddy? I know he's waving at the screen. That's the funny part.
Oh, nice.
God, I had jerk chicken wings for dinner, and I feel like crap now.
Oh, man.
Whatever.
Homemade. Take out.
It's all right. We'll get over it. We'll get over it. So where in Texas are you right now?
I'm down in McAllen, which is down near the very southern tip of Texas. It's about an 8-hour drive from where I live, which is what I just did earlier.
Nice. That's a long trek.
So it's a big area to try to cover, which is why groups like MUFON have to have several different chapters or divisions all over.
Let me ask you this, because I've never been to Texas, and I know the size of British Columbia. And British Columbia, like Texas, is the size of bigger than most countries out there. And I'm not even at the halfway point. If I were to go right up to the border, I'd be driving for about another 24 hours.
Oh.
So for you, when you're driving down, not knowing what it's like down there, because up here where I am, it's all forest and trees. I get the picture that it would be, farmland, desert, maybe not desert, but more farmland and everything. Is that what it's like?
Yeah, well, leaving the DFW area, which is all a huge city, and so you're getting through toward what's called Waco, and that's halfway, or at least like on the way toward Austin, which is the capital of Texas, another big city area. So in the middle, which is about a 2.5 or so hour to 3 hour stretch of driving, you do see a lot of fields, open nature areas. There are trees, there are hills. You're kind of getting into the hill country down there. And then from Austin, you go southwest into San Antonio, which is another huge mega city area. And then from there down south, it's about another 3 or so hour drive, which is what becomes a lot more, less just open fields. I mean, there are giant spaces of land, but it becomes, you're closer to the coast, the Gulf over here. And I think that that's one of the things that, you start to see more. There are a lot of giant palm trees transplanted over here years ago. And so when you get close down to the southern tip of Texas, you'll start to see a lot of these tropical trees on the way down. And so it's becomes a lot more of a different type of climate. It's a little bit more the temperate, it's not the same as the, right, the plains or anything, but I would say the coastal plains is a much different environment altogether. The elevation's changed. It's usually warmer also down here. You're pretty much right at the border of Mexico, where I am right here. So.
Oh, nice. Very nice. I'd like to visit down there. See, that's the type of, to me, that's a great vacation. Is just, I love driving. I love driving and seeing things that I normally wouldn't see, and going through countryside like that, to me, that would be wonderful. Like, one of my favorite drives that I've done a few times is that stretch between Reno and Las Vegas, where literally it's all military bases every time you go around a corner. I'm a military buff, man. I mean, I think it's amazing. And to other people, they're like, it is the worst drive in the world. And I'm like, no way, man. That is one of my favorites. taking the California coastline. I've done that, and to me, that's like, I'd take the desert because it's such a different look to it than even driving through the mountains where I live. I guess you just need a change every now and again. But we've got about 30 seconds here before we're going to get going, I think. Hold on. Yeah, about 30 seconds. Catherine Gay, how are you? Nice to see you. And who else has jumped in here? Scott Brown, it's been a while. Good to have you back. Janie, nice to see you. And I think we're caught up there. Thank you to our super chatters, Beverly and Jay, so far. It's a great way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. So thank you very, very much. Here we go, everybody. Here we go with the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. It's always a good time to have you around when we're talking all these weird things from UFOs to Bigfoot. Reminder to all of you that if you miss portions of this show or others, you can always check out our free archives on YouTube or any major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. You can follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Researcher Daniel Allen Jones from a beautiful state of Texas is here, and we're looking into Bigfoot. We're looking into all sorts of cryptids and, of course, major UFO sightings. And your favorite to cover is a pretty big story here, Daniel, and I'd love you to share that with our audience.
Definitely. So, Texas is no stranger to strange tales, legends, and encounters. And when it comes to UFOs, there are stories that go back over a century. And one of the fun ones that I always like to say that, there can be many different ways that people interpret what we find in old newspapers. And many of the people who have looked into the stories of UFOs for, several years might know about the so-called Great Airship Mystery. But there's one story that it even predates that, which is from 1878, and it's from North Dallas, but it was published in the Denison Daily News, and it was about a farmer named John Martin who saw an object he described and used different things to say that it was small like an orange, then became large like a saucer. And so I think it's interesting to say that Texas can claim stake to using the term saucer well before Kenneth Arnold's sighting over Mount Rainier in 1947 up in Washington. So that's a fun one to start with chronologically. Going back, of course, people see all kinds of things that don't make any sense. And in the 1800s, there's all kinds of things that maybe never got recorded or got lost. But when it comes to, as I mentioned earlier, the Great Airship Mystery, there are several reports all over the states, in California and the Midwest, but especially in Texas. And while you have some interesting stories of people seeing these aerial vessels that they sometimes refer to as dirigibles or airships, very much blimp-like or hot air balloon-like. These were cigar-shaped and often had cabins and fuselage and different things that were somewhat of an apparatus of wings and propellers. And many of these cases might actually end up featuring something like occupants or a crew. Very much seemed to be like inventors, and people thought that there could be an inventor behind a lot of these stories of this airship. And it swept the nation in 1896 and into early 1897, into the spring, especially in April of 1897. There are many stories, even in that month, probably more than any before, but one specifically that was featured in the Dallas Morning News at the time. The publication date, April 19th, featured several stories on the 5th page, over a dozen actually, but there in the middle was printed a story called A Windmill Demolishes It by a man named S.E. Hayden. And while many of the other stories described the airship, or sometimes just what they refer to as the ship, there was one story from Aurora, Texas, that occurred apparently 2 days earlier that was written by Hayden that describes the ship crashing into a windmill and exploding, scattering debris for acres, and the townsfolk coming to gather up specimens of what it called the strange metal, but also to examine the remains of the apparent pilot that was described by another person the article mentions as being, quote, not an inhabitant of this world, later to be given a funeral. And so one of the challenges of a story like this is not only, of course, many people are probably familiar with the legend from Aurora, Texas, and I refer to it as a legend because you can look at it as an investigative UFO case. You can look at it as folklore. You can look at it as fact or fiction. And many people interpret it and always have and probably will interpret it in many different ways. But to me, I think what's important is to document fact, fiction, or folklore, that this is a story in Texas history that is often overlooked as having a part to play, I think, in influencing or inspiring, if not anything else, a sense of wonder and of curiosity when it does come to the subject of UFOs or of alien life or of non-human intelligence or what might else there could be besides just us humans here alone. And I think it's interesting to see that well before the advent of the popularity of science fiction, you have a story that just describes exactly some of the different elements of what we see in today's modern ufology, which is essentially the ideas of not just sightings of unknown objects, but the wreckage of their crashes, and not only just the materials of these things like technology, but also the remains of apparent occupants of potential life forms. And I think that's really an exciting idea, that regardless of this particular story from Aurora, Texas in 1897 being real or not, that perhaps there are things that might have lent some credibility to where we are today that maybe inspire these types of stories in a way that we can find there can be some validity to, whether it's what's being talked about in Congress or what's being discussed in documentaries or through social media. It seems to be something that's catching a lot of attention. It's very sensational, of course, but I think that we can find that things can be looked at not only with a sense of wonderment with looking at it as folklore, but also what are the facts. And I think it's important to see that regardless of people that look at some of these stories, and there are many in Texas, of course, it's a large area. So simply due to that factor, there will be usually a higher number of sightings, simply because there are more people to report them. And again, they don't always get reported, but it is important to know that with this particular story, there isn't any mention of anything about this. And I live nearby the town, and I should just say that my first instance of becoming aware of this story was through Jim Mars, who, while I was working with, would share about this. He was featured on a number of different programs, television shows, or whatever it might be. And in his book, Alien Agenda, he did discuss how this story was an earlier precursor to the idea of the UFO topic having its own sort of embodiment within the social psyche. And I think that we see that sometimes if you look out throughout history, people tend to look back and try to interpret things with a modern lens. And I think that there are ideas of what people call cultural tracking, as if there's maybe a sense of utilization with technology that's period based from a sense of others or whatever the intelligences are that are behind what people just refer to ambiguously as the phenomenon. So there's a lot of outlook when it comes to how this is interpreted. And I think it's important to see that we can view and learn about those different outlooks without necessarily believing in them, but to understand it as a cultural study. And I think that's where it's important to look at this particular historic story of over a century, 128 years old now, I think. And so it's important to see that there are a lot of interpretations of it, but nothing was mentioned for a great period of time, from basically its iteration in that one article, a windmill demolishes it, until about any public sense of the awareness until 1966. So you have this huge gap of several decades where it was not known publicly at all. And if anyone did know anything about it, whether it was real or not, there would have just been word of mouth between people there in the town. And so from 66 on, there is something that happened every year to show that there was either interest expressed by journalists, writers, local investigators, and when ufology or people just interested in flying saucers and into UFOs overall, we find that people actually caught wind of the story and wanted to descend upon the small town of Aurora, Texas, and investigate, not only to see if there is any legitimate claim to the supposed crash, but also if there's a body buried there in the local cemetery, as the original story describes with the funeral.
Daniel, I mean, I still can't believe that with all the evidence that was there, the crash debris, the potential bodies and everything, that there are still people today who are like, yeah, that never happened. It's all BS. It's, just totally downplaying this great part of history of the area.
Well, I think that it's something that when you have so many components to a story like this, it's hard to really pin down each different component in a factual way, and putting in a lot of work into putting together not only a chronology, but basically like an encyclopedia database of all things Aurora. I try to find the things that not only talk about it in whatever form, but especially in any extremity. And I think that's really important to see when it comes to a subject like this. Why is it that people say it didn't happen? Because of what? Or why it did happen? Because of this person said it or this person said it. So when tracing back any very strong definitive claims about anything that happened with this story, it's very difficult. There are no living witnesses now. One thing I would say is important to keep in mind, that thanks to people like the late great Jim Mars, my buddy, who took the time during 1973 to actually talk to people who did claim to be living witnesses. As you mentioned earlier, the importance of interviewing witnesses is that, if their stories can't be collected and collated with other data and points of data in a way that does allow for there to be further input and research done by any number of people from any point on, that if we don't keep track of that, we can't record or report it for future people to be able to study, then it won't really matter if someone says it happened or not, because it's just going to be on their word. And when you're so far removed from a story that happened over a century ago, there's very little left to try to work with other than people saying it happened or it didn't happen because of XYZ. After looking into a lot of those different XYZs, what I found is that it really all depends on whose story you really find is the most entrusting. And I think that that's where it's something that either, if you want to believe that it happens, okay. If you want to believe that everything's weighing against it, okay. But the real challenge is no one absolutely knows either way, because it's not only a matter of, is there a body in the cemetery? It's not only a matter of, did something actually cause burnt wreckage? Because there will be people who have spent many years looking into this who would absolutely say something absolutely happened, whether it was an alien spaceship with a being that was buried or not. That might be a very fantastic angle to it, but people will say that there's absolutely something that occurred that caused either a very high amount of heat, much less an explosion, that scattered something. And it's really challenging to know now, because with even more contemporary UFO crash cases, of which there aren't very many, other than in the last few years, we hear these buzzwords about the intercepted objects that were basically shot down, and so one of the challenges is that many of the so-called UFO crash cases are either historic or are suddenly just popping up into this field of study and all of its kind of different ways now. But I think it's important to see that people can go out to this location and they can look into it. They can find whatever they are able to or not, and whether they find that they can come to a conclusion based on what I think is incomplete information for basically anybody, is that it doesn't do anyone justice. It's actually a disservice to science to definitively close the case based upon a lack of evidence, only in the sense that you're making a definitive claim that something altogether either didn't happen. So because the story includes not just the sighting of an object, but it's crashed debris and potential materials, with the idea of an explosion taking place, which there does seem to be. The idea is that in the 70s this story was basically debunked because they said there wasn't actually a windmill, and this was written in one of the local history books. And the challenge to that is that there absolutely was a base for a windmill. And so when this is something that people use as a way to say that it didn't happen because so-and-so says that there wasn't this, and there are other things that show that there was, it's a very convoluted story, even many, many years later. So I would say that to look into it as an investigative case is important. To an extent, there's only so many things that we can do. To look at it overall, to look at every possible way it's been included. And that does include the whole idea of how it fits into not just an investigative scientific pursuit, but also where does this fit into pop culture? Many people don't know that there was actually a movie made called Aurora Encounter back in 1986, which is kind of riding the coattails of E.T. from a few years earlier. And it's not the best movie ever, but it's fun. It has very little to do with the actual story as far as what happens, but it's something that happens to pop up year after year. And after chronicling this from 66 on, there's not really much before that, but there just seems to be something that's been included in newspapers, books, magazines, multiple publications. It's been on network television multiple times. Many people have written about it. It's been probably one of the most publicized stories of an otherworldly encounter, whether it happened or not. And I think that knowing that its cultural value is still as significant as its ability to be factually discerned shouldn't outweigh our discretion in looking at them either way. So I think it's important that, to me, it's not one or the other, that this either happened or not, but that it still can show us that there's a lot we can learn by even what can be studied about the history of a story like this. And so with that, I look at many of these stories historically that way as well.
What do you think UFOs are? I don't UAP. So what do you think UFOs are?
I think that, that's a really big question. So it's something that is different for everyone. I think it's a very subjective concept. I think that people experience things all the time. And a good example is, I think that there are genuine unknowns. And I think that people will see things that they don't know what they are. And that to them is a UFO, which is why I say it's subjective. But that other people who might have more familiarity with what's happening will say, oh, that's this. And I think a good example is sometimes the sensational issues that we see, like sometimes lately, there are a lot of drones in the sky. And I think that there's a lot of cause for interest and suspicion of many things. But at the same time, like, there are a lot of regular drones as well that sometimes get misidentified. So I do think misidentification plays a part, but it doesn't account for the totality of all UFOs, because I don't think it's a singular phenomenon. I think that it's an umbrella term that helps us describe something that people just don't know what they're looking at. And unfortunately, sometimes people are not great witnesses to things that otherwise could be very prosaic. So I think in my objectivity, I have to remain, in a sense, level-headed about when someone says UFO. Sometimes they already know what they really mean, but they're saying that word because it's the only thing that really helps to kind of encapsulate, what it is. I would sometimes caution, if I'm sharing something with a group of people, that UFO doesn't always mean alien spaceship. It doesn't mean that UFOs aren't alien spaceships, but it's easy to conflate the term. So sometimes it's just a matter of semantics. So are UFOs exotic technologies from an otherworldly origin? That would be amazing. Are they misidentified airplanes? Sure, sometimes, but I don't think that's all of it. And I think that it's one of those things that's like Bigfoot, the term. And sometimes people don't really grasp how that does play into a bigger part of our cultural understanding of these ideas, is that things like those terms give us some kind of archetype to try to convey something that we just don't have a definitive grasp on. And sometimes we attribute various qualities to those things. Like if someone says, I saw a Bigfoot, it's like, well, what, I guess you mean you saw something large and, person-like and hairy and all of that. But what do you really mean? Like, what did you really see? Because that term itself is very challenging for most people who don't look into this or don't know what it is. They kind of have this idea like, well, I don't know what to say about that, So I think that it helps convey an idea in society that carries a sense of what challenges us to really see that we don't really know everything. And it's a helpful way that either shows that people are repelled by this idea, like, whoa, it's like, sometimes people, when they hear buzzwords like that, they think, well, oh, that catches my attention, I want to learn more because I'm interested in that. Or they say, well, I don't see things that way. So, to each their own. So I think it's important to see that just the word UFO itself, it's evocative, because everyone will interpret it different ways. And what the physical or whatever object that people are interpreting, I think also can be interpreted in different ways. Along with the word, the actual phenomenon is interpreted by many different people through their own lens of perception. So I'm hopeful that some of these UFOs actually do represent something that's not mundane, because that would be very exciting. I feel confident that there is convincing things to show that there are strange unknowns, but I don't know myself. And I think the whole idea is that they are unknown. And that's why it's like difficult to continue the the use of this terminology because it continues to implore that something is unknown, even when we do explain what it is or it can be determined. But yeah, I do think it challenges us in many ways that maybe we don't even realize is how we use terms like UFO or UAP, if that's what people ascribe to as well.
We have 4.5 minutes to go with you before we got to go to break. At the top of the hour, Daniel Allen Jones is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Do you think then that there is something anomalous coming from the sky above that is visiting our planet, potentially been here thousands of years, maybe even made homes here, whether it's in the ocean, in the mountains, in the deserts where nobody goes? What's your thoughts?
Well, I think that it's really curious to see that if this is not a new phenomenon, which, many people do seem to have the sense that this has been going on for a long time, and that maybe various iterations of civilization have come and gone that do in some way maybe represent this idea beyond just us. And I find that it's important to consider that with all the ways that we interpret things now, even in the last several decades, that we will continue to develop new understanding based upon regular scientific discoveries. And I think through that process itself, that we will continue to become more open to the possibility that I think is not just a possibility, but the likeliness that not only are there, it's probable that there is life anywhere else in the universe, but that one, is it coming here? I'd like to think that can happen if there's something that can detect whatever it is beyond just radio signals. I'd be hopeful that they can know that something else like us is here as well, if they're not already intimately involved. But more so over that, why shouldn't there already be something here beyond anyone else coming here, but that we exist alongside something that maybe has already been here, or we've been alongside the entire time, that in some way we are just oblivious to. I think that might even be more exciting, and it's easy to say that something can come from elsewhere. I think that that's to be expected in some way, that it would be possible for an advanced civilization, if we're already considering doing that ourselves, 1,000, 100,000, 1,000,000 years more advanced, for sure they would be able to detect probably anything to be able to get here and know how to do that. So I think a lot of it's an engineering challenge, but also I think it's exciting to consider there could be other near humans or intelligent advanced agents here in our own world that we interact with that aren't from necessarily another star system. So that's pretty exciting too.
I think it's very exciting. I mean, just the thought that we may not be alone. And for people who have had the ultimate experience, obviously they've had their own disclosure. So I'll ask you with 2 minutes to go. Are you a disclosure guy or are you a confirmation guy?
I think that disclosure, in the sense that most people consider it, probably won't take place as an event, but as a process of social awareness. I think it's social activism. A lot of people say we are disclosure. I'm not a proponent of those ideas in the sense of official disclosure. I think and what I should say is, when it comes to disclosure in that sense, official disclosure, I don't know that that's going to happen. When people say we are disclosure and the grassroots and all this, I think that maybe it's just semantics again, but it seems more to be like social activism and being proactive about being able to be open and sharing stories. I'm all for that. But I also don't confuse that with the idea that official disclosure will be something we should be hopeful that will take place. It would be amazing for it too. And I think it would be, very unlikely that it would take place in those kinds of ways. But I think it could be more of a process, but also not necessarily just a singular event, but also involving, the idea of an orchestration of sorts to be revealing of something which has otherwise been concealed for decades. Very unlikely to happen. I think it would be redirected. I think that's a misdirect. I think that it could be utilized for political gain and various parties of interest. And I think it's important to see that people can be open and interested in this and be proactive in sharing and transparent. It doesn't have to rely on the idea that from officialdom to be able to acknowledge and confirm that from them. But I think that it's important that either way, people will come to their own conclusions. If there's support behind that, they will feel more reassured, regardless of whether it's government or any other affiliation.
Love it. Daniel, we got about 35 seconds left. I know you're a big cryptid guy too. And when we turn the corner, we're going to talk a lot about your cryptid encounters and cryptid stories that you have chased. The one thing that trips me out about Texas is how many cryptids are there. Not just Bigfoot, or Dogman. You talk about the pterodactyls that are allegedly there, the tiny miniature Velociraptors and T-Rexes that are there. You apparently got tigers running around the northern part, real tigers, not just fake tigers, real tigers, thanks to the Tiger King releasing a few tigers back in the day. Bigfoot, Dogman, you name it. We're talking cryptids with Daniel Allen Jones when we return on Spaced Out Radio. Stay tuned, everybody.
This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
All right, we got about 6 minutes here. I'm going to put you back in the green room. I'll be right back in a couple minutes.
Sounds good.
All right, buddy. Be right back, everybody. right. I am back. We got about a $1.37 here. Let's say hello to Dead Fish. J Truth Seeker, how you doing? Chris Jarvis, Scrub-a-Dub-Dub, good to see you guys. And who else has jumped in here? Let's see here. I like Ike. Oh, good name. I like Ike. Welcome to SOR Chat. Gamer Quest, nice to see you. Let's bring Daniel back in. Human Carl, always a pleasure. And there, we're caught up. We are caught up. Noble Patrick, good to see you. Thank you to our super chatters, Jay and Beverly. And it's good to see you guys. All right, Daniel, getting ready for the cryptid talk, man.
All right.
I'm pumped. Mayhem, good to have you here. Thank you for coming on in. Of course, I spill water on my keyboard. That's always a good thing to do. Casey Ryback, I know who you are. Did the aircraft open or hatch? Here we go. Here we go with hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you very much for joining us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet called Earth. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Obligation. Obligation is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. All the way from Texas, Daniel Allen Jones joins us talking about from UFOs. We're going into cryptids now because I got to ask you, what do you like covering more, UFOs or these cryptid creatures?
It's a tough one because I think that one of the things I see that's interesting about how we can look at UFOs and the subject of and culture of ufology to also serve as inspiration to learn more about things like the cosmos, space, otherworldly life, and possibilities. Obviously, that might be to, much of an insinuation that UFOs mean outer space, but I think that if not anything else, hey, it can still motivate us to learn about those things. So for cryptozoology, I think about that relating to things in the natural world, like zoology as a precursor to cryptozoology. So it's fun to be able to learn about wildlife biology, animal behavior and science, and things that I think help to show that there's still a lot of wonderful things about all the creatures here that we see and can interact with, more regularly than maybe the strange cryptids or unknown creatures. So I really enjoy utilizing that as a form of being able to kind of be more grounded with the natural world. Whereas ufology, I think, can also inspire, a little bit more loftiness of the possibilities of what's out there and what can we learn about the, the heavens and the cosmos as well. So, in some way it's tough to really choose one or the other, but I'd say that more practically, I like cryptozoology since it really can be something that helps us learn more about just wildlife and nature and have an appreciation and basically develop compassion for our place here amongst all these other beautiful creatures that we're already with, So I'd say probably cryptozoology.
Out of all those cryptids that are wandering around Texas, which one's your favorite?
I think that I would say it's easy to just say what we think of as Bigfoot, because really that makes things, I'd say, kind of put them in its own category. But there are, as you mentioned, so many other cryptid stories here in Texas I would just say that what it would implicate if in the event that here in Texas, we were to find that there's a near human creature, and maybe that seems derogatory, but like, like humans are creatures, I would say. So if we were to make the official, not just discovery, but then therefore declaration that there is something near human here in the state, I mean, it's not really about being territorial, but if in the event it was Texas, there's a lot that's already actually been considered. For example, Jefferson, Texas, and thanks to my good close friend Craig Woolheater of the Texas Research Bigfoot Research Conservancy, he has helped with the city of Jefferson to make an official declaration that Marion County is, which is within what Jefferson is within, has been declared a safe haven for Bigfoot, which is exciting to think that, the framework is already laid out. If in the event that we do say, okay, Bigfoot's, people often ask, what if UFOs are said that they are real? And not only that, they say, okay, UFOs aren't just real, but like alien spaceships are real, therefore aliens are real. Then people say, then now what, right? So a lot of things would probably happen. And, we would like to think a lot of things are already in place to help with that, rather than it just being kind of disastrous and thrown together of sorts. But I would say that thanks to those considerations of serious nature, and it's also enjoyable, it can be enthusiastic to know that that these things can be fun, but also in a very serious way. Like, this is a real official declaration. It's not only for the sake of driving tourism, which is going to happen anyways. It can help generate a sense of commercial interest and boost the economy. It can also help bring people into town to learn more about these interesting subjects. And if not anything else, inspire them to be more aware of nature and in some way the places that they get the opportunity to live within and can go travel to explore. So I would say that if something like Bigfoot were to be declared real, that would be a whole other thing, being that how near human it is. But I would just say, just because of my appreciation for all the other strange types of cryptids, that it would be incredible to think that there is something to the effect of what you mentioned earlier, like what has been described in the rash of 1976 sightings down here, exactly where I am this weekend in South Texas in the Rio Grande Valley. Down here in the RGV, we have stories of flying creatures that were unknown, and in some way that those are UFOs. They might not be mechanical objects, but people were seeing things down here in Raymondville and Brownville, and in some way all the way up to San Antonio, where people like school teachers were witnessing what they described as pterodactyl-like creatures, sometimes also referred to as pteranodons or pterosaurs. People were certain that that's what they were seeing in 1976, and during that year it was strangely reported in many of the newspapers that people were seeing these things. Now, is this a product of misidentification? Perhaps there could be some, but to know that there were people willing to say that, yes, this is what I saw in independent places and ways, is really incredible to consider. That it would be amazing to think that there could be what we would say is a relict species, a relict dinosaur or something that still has persisted from a bygone era all the way through up into modern times is incredible. Whether that is what we would call Bigfoot or something else, as a relict species, I think is important. Not necessarily a relic, like the remains of a person, but a relict being able to persist beyond the archaic world of what we think of as these old subspecies of humanity, like Homo habilis or Homo erectus, and some of these other ideas that are being considered in other places in the world, like Homo floresiensis, Hobbit man. People are very much considering that there could be really very real little people over in Indonesia and places like Sumatra, and other places around the world. So I would say that it would be life-changing for the not only the discovery, but how such a discovery would be declared to the world if the issue of Bigfoot became public awareness. All the other cryptids are fascinating too, and it's hard to put them down, but I would say the avian ones, like the flying big birds, as my good buddy, my colleague, the world-renowned cryptozoologist Ken Gerhard has written about, whether they are actual pterodactyls is what we would think of them or not. Something was being seen of enormous stature, and it would be incredible to think that there are giant birds or something to that effect still out there, what people sometimes refer to as a thunderbird. I think that's fascinating. There are several other types of cryptids and strange creatures that have been seen and spotted throughout the state and beyond. So anything that's bipedal or doesn't seem to fit in the natural physiological fossil record is always like extremely standing out. But other things that are a bit more practical, like there aren't really many aquatic cryptids in Texas, but it should be said that basically many of those sightings could be attributed to misidentified known species of just large proportions, like giant catfish and giant turtles and things. I mean, that's interesting in and of itself, but there are stories being that we have the Gulf here, that, you know, right here out at sea, people have described things for years. And there are reports of giant encounters of some creatures, sea serpents, whatever they may be, that date back a long time. But I should say in the historic record, there is what's called the wild man and wild woman of Navidad here in Texas that goes back to the 1850s. And this is very much like what we call Bigfoot, but people should keep in mind, many of us here are probably familiar because we're interested in these topics, but the common person doesn't know that the term Bigfoot was a media invention, and in doing so garnered a lot of attention for what we now refer to as Bigfoot in a way that was never attributed as such before. So before the 50s, no one was saying Bigfoot referring to a giant hairy person or creature or hominid or whatever it could be. But the idea that, you know, people were seeing these feral, hairy humans or wild people was very much a recorded part of history. And whether they were just fancy stories or people were actually seeing them, it was on our mind. And I think that's what's important, is that I think something that's a little bit more human related can have a more drastic effect on our outlook and our involvement with wildlife, with conservancy, with preservation. And it should be the case with other issues. If we discover new species, you know, people talk often about the chupacabra, which is actually different here in Texas than the Puerto Rican El Chupacabras, which is a story, a much more recent story in time in the 90s than many of the different cases people talk about. There are several different types of ideas that people have when it comes to these different cryptids, but overall, thanks to people have gone and collected reports or have been open to share about something that doesn't really seem to fit in with the modern biological paradigm, it's important that people also get the impression that ranchers out here are very familiar with the indigenous and natural wildlife. So when something comes around, as you mentioned, whether it's a big cat or an exotic animal or creature that doesn't necessarily fit into the biome in a way that it's, you know, normally there, that can get a lot of notoriety in various circles. And if that reaches the greater part of the community, it becomes a news sensation. And that's why we see things sometimes that utilize the term chupacabra to use as a catch-all, because it's a cultural icon at this point to describe something unknown or this weird creature. It's almost superstitious in some ways to be able to use that, but I think that it's helpful, culturally speaking, to show that we encounter strange things a lot, and it's something that usually can be explained. But when there are real interesting encounters that deal with these types of creatures, you know, there are thanks to people like I mentioned, my buddy Craig and Ken Gerhard and many others who document these types of stories all over Texas and beyond, help to kind of establish a strong way for us to be able to preserve that information for future research and for the ability for us to look at it in a cohesive way rather than just have only stories that are hearsay or anecdotal, but to actually like provide a sense of community along the way by holding events about this stuff to learn about these types of encounters. And so I would say overall, you know, it's probably a really easy one to jump to, but Bigfoot, I can see, obviously you've got a great collection of memorabilia. I think it's fun to see that this can be more than just the idea of a, you know, a scientific discovery, but how this affects us, how this should also make us be more considerate about how not only we treat other animals and creatures and potential people or beings of anything, but also how we connect with each other and where we find ourselves fitting alongside all of these other interesting intelligences and creatures.
I want to just talk about the pterodactyls potentially, because I know for a number of years, Jonathan Whitcomb from Texas has been looking into this triangle that seems to go from British Columbia, where I am, north of me, to all the way over to like New Zealand and Tahiti, and then over towards Mexico and Texas. And it seems like these creatures that he calls the Ropen, who seem to have a red light, like their heart almost glows through their very translucent skin, flying around, and that he is convinced these are very real. And even up north in British Columbia, there's one First Nations reserve there where they believe many of their men have gone missing due to being pterodactyl food. I mean, have you thought about this? Do you think that there is some dinosaur type bird that is still flying around?
Well, I would think it'd be very impressive, even in our modern age and our idea of what we have at our disposal. Even in the public, it would be amazing to know that there's still the potential for discovering very large species of mammals, of avian creatures, of aquatic creatures, which is probably the most likely expected large animal to be discovered is going to be in the oceans, of course. But to think that there are still land and air animals out there that are completely remote or set apart to our public awareness, and I should make a good underline of public awareness, because with all the technology that the military or any private parties can have, it's it would be weird that there haven't been major discoveries that have been, unfortunately, not intentionally suppressed, although anyone could go that route as well, but in some way developed in a way that has been in isolation, that hasn't been unfortunately allotted to probably the deserving scientists and community of people who could otherwise help to understand that anytime anything is listed that can be endangered, it can immediately further endanger the creatures in question. Because if, like, let's say you say that these pterodactyls are real, it's something that people are going to say, well, I'm going to go bag me one. It's like one of the challenges of announcing the existence of a super rare species that's very, in the very minority of its existence at this point. It's unfortunately going to impact its ability to persist just because of our social and public awareness of it. So I would say one of the challenges of that is knowing that even if it is real, we have to be very careful of how that's handled, because people often forget that a scientific discovery is not always instantaneous as a declaration to the public. How it's handled sometimes is made a mess of by the media, or it can be very well executed. It's always going to be a mixed bag. But what I think is important is, being right here in this area, just to think that, like, we were saying earlier, there are stretches of land here that are completely remote. Some people can get to them, but it's not like huge swaths of people that are just completely aware at all times of everything going on out in the remote wilderness for stretches of miles. It's much easier for just like conventional wildlife to already thrive and exist in a way that's unknown. And in some ironic way, the idea of cryptozoology being about hidden animals should also imply that there are things that animals do unknown to us, unless in some way we are tracking them, even in the most mundane sense of the term. I think that we can get technical about the terminology, but the whole idea of cryptids is that there are creatures that are unknown to modern science. And so it's really important that if there are creatures like these potential pterodactyls out there, that would be exciting. One of the most wild stories I was told about the Marfa lights, which are in Marfa, Texas, out in West Texas. I've been a number of times. I've seen what I perceive as those lights. I don't know what they are, but they are fascinating. From someone who worked with the Marfa Visitor Center, they told me that they were called at one point and told about an investigation that was going to take place based upon the impression that the lights are actually Ropen, as you mentioned, pterodactyl-like creatures that acquire or have the ability of, in some way, of bioluminescence and being able to emit light. If there are such creatures as Ropen, which has been described as existing on Papua New Guinea islands, if there are any creatures that are actually like this anywhere in the world, that's amazing. But also, like, to think that something like that would be it, or even some of these other potential sightings, like you're saying, anywhere in this area that seems to have a concentration of activity, it would change a lot of how we understand the ways in which not only wildlife can migrate or evade detection in a very regular way, but it could also show us that there could be some components of, whether it's physiology, anatomy, or whatever basic animal science that has either been completely overlooked or untapped as far as a way to kind of understand a new aspect of what is helping these potential creatures exist beyond modern awareness. That to me is amazing, that if there are Bigfoot creatures, if there are extremely large bird, pterodactyl, thunderbird, big bird creatures, or any other large creatures out there that have gone however many years, like this whole time, basically without absolute definitive like awareness in public, that to me is amazing, because everyone knows what Bigfoot is. It's an icon. Everyone sees frame 352 and they'll say that's Bigfoot, but it's more of a pop culture idea at this point, rather than it being a like solidified animal that people can tangibly interact with. So I think that, those types of challenges also help it to be stuck within sort of the in-between realm of a cultural concept along with a potential reality when it comes to wildlife biology and the issue of conservancy, and how all of these things will come into effect in the event that these things, whatever they are, any cryptids, are essentially announced to the world that they actually do exist.
Have you ever talked to anybody who's seen one? As we got about 4 minutes to go.
Well, one of the interesting things is I'm here down in South Texas right now. We have the Edinburgh UFO Festival and Conference every year. I make the drive down here. I'm involved with that event. It's an awesome opportunity to have a lot of people here in the local community down in the valley come out. And every time we do, although it's mainly about the UFO topic, people will come out, and because we've kind of been able to share about some of these sightings that people are seeing, aerial objects or unknown creatures that are flying around, it does end up blending into ufology in some sense. And people will come and share, I saw that. I was there in the 70s. I saw them in the 80s. One came up to me. So actually, as a product of being able to facilitate community events, people come out of the woodworks. As you know, this happens in a really interesting way, that people are kind of resistant to share in a way that might have some kind of like public hindrance with what they're doing with work, whatever. So sometimes people won't want to be able to get recognized or have any kind of like accountability for a story if they know it'll affect their reputation or something. But people, when they find a group that's all about it and supportive in this endeavor, they'll open up and they'll say, you know what? I remember seeing him. My cousin or so-and-so, my family member, we saw them. We were driving, and whether it was here in Harlingen, Texas, over in Raymondville, here in the South Texas area, it was a huge thing all throughout the 70s and apparently the 80s. And so what I found is that, that as we continue to do things that get people together, it might always be through something online or social media, but sometimes it's through physical in-person interaction. People are more willing to open up because they're there. They're excited to actually talk. So yeah, it's really important, I think, to know that not only does that happen with UFOs, but hey, people are willing to share their cryptid stories or encounters, whether they even perceive them as that or not. These are mostly people who don't know anything about cryptozoology or ufology, but they say, you know what, I just wanted to be able to tell somebody. And I think that should be interesting to note, that usually there can be a motive, but I think that it's important to see that some people just want somebody to tell that they had something happen. Whatever that happens from there, they don't know, but it's something we should all pay attention to, if not anything else. So yeah, it is important to see that people do share about encounters, whether it was more recent or historic. We need to do what we can to preserve that information.
Speaking of these Ropen, excuse me, do you think people are looking into a different timeline? Maybe seeing a different dimension opening up when they see these things flying?
I think it's an interesting concept. There's a book called The Goblin Universe years ago that came out that kind of alluded to these ideas of like interdimensional timelines, colliding, and this idea that maybe portals are opening up. And, I think that that's all very fascinating. I think it's all very easy to jump into the idea that, like, maybe because something seems to stand out so much that it has to be from something completely different. I do find that, sure, that there are possibilities where there could be interactions. And I do find it's important to also consider that the idea in our own mind, that beyond it being like a hallucination, that maybe in some way we can tap into a residual effect of reality that in some way, whether collectively or individually, allows us to be perceptive of some phenomena, whatever that is, whether we perceive it as a pterodactyl creature, if that's really what's going on or not. What I think is important is, why isn't that happening more often at, like, in the Walmart parking lot or something, So, it's important also consider the consistency, the concentration of activity in various geographic locations, whether there are concentrations that seem to be evocative of these anomalies, and what are we doing to keep track of that, and who has been for whatever amount of time. So I think that's
that thought right there. We're going to get into Bigfoot next. Daniel Allen Jones on Spaced Out Radio. We have until the top of the hour.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with your host, Dave Scott.
All right, we are clear, my man. Hold on, I got you on mute here. Hold on, there you go.
Oh, no worries. I'm just saying the comments are flying in over here.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I love all the input. It's great to see like so much interaction. Everyone's like part of the contribution. This is awesome.
You know, as much as I'm a UFO guy, I love Bigfoot. Love Bigfoot. The Sasquatch and everything to do with that is just, it's perfect.
It's something that I think is just you know, there's so much like I love all the stuff you have in your collection. I'm a big fan of the memorabilia marketing and products, you know, in a way that, you know, I think that it's fun to see like this is people enjoy it. It's cool. It's also a greater way for the public to know about it rather than just those who are strictly interested in it as a focus, you know. And I think that it's cool because it's so iconic, and it's fun for people.
Very true. Very true. I think, you know, but once you get that first sighting of something, man, it is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you know, in my own way, I've experienced a lot of different types of. I mean, I've seen strange lights in the sky. I've seen strange things. I've never seen like a daylight disc or anything. I've had several psychedelic experience where, you know, that is my own kind of experience, and, you know, explaining to people is interesting, but also it's like, you know, those types of things are I think very personal in some ways, like that only kind of apply to the person it's occurring to. But, you know, I've never seen anything unusual as far as an animal. I love wildlife and I love being observant of wildlife, but, you know, I would never say that I've seen a Bigfoot, although, you know, it's hard to know what anyone would really do once you do. And most of the people I've talked to that weren't planning on it. That's one of the challenges, like with UFOs, is most people weren't out like trying to find them, you know, and that's a kind of a interesting thing in and of itself too, how that all works.
Very true. Very true, my man. We got about 3 minutes here. Thank you, Area 53. Phineas over on X, how you doing? Appreciate that. Yeah, I have my audience probably sick of hearing it, but I got to wait till May when the snow melts.
Oh, wow.
I have an area here where there is just it's screwed up, and it's a plane crash site that killed 52 people back in 1965. And we have had ghost encounters there. We've had Sasquatch encounters there. We've been escorted out of the forest twice. We've had UFO and alien encounters there. It's like a hotbed, maybe the size of a football field.
Yeah, and things like that kind of make me wonder, is there something that draws things into an area, or that it some way like permeates something that is generating that a field or something? And I think that's curious because, like you're saying, you're mentioning the triangle or wherever these areas can be, there could be something to that. And I think that's important to see that, you know, are there other things that we can find that help to put that in perspective? And sometimes it's, you know, the geographical or physical type of location that might be strong in these mineral compositions, or it might be close to, you know, this type of land or water form or something. I think is important to see, like, why some of these things types of things happen, and it's such a concentration like that. That's really weird that all that, and unfortunate that happened with the plane and all.
I personally think, and I'm going to start this about a 2 to 3 year endeavor there. I have a feeling, or at least my theory, I'm going to call it a theory because I've never been a researcher. I've always been an enthusiast. But my theory is, I believe that the Sasquatch are protectors of the souls that are still there.
Yeah, that would be, I mean, I hope that there's something going on that's like more than just interesting animals. I mean, that's amazing if that's all it is, and we can kind of mention that too. But I'm very hopeful that there's something with depth to some of these things going on that are spiritual in some way. But at the same time, I don't think it's only that can be the only thing we look forward to, because it's still great to learn about, even if we find regular qualities of animals and things too. Like even that I think is
Oh
awesome.
yeah, dude. Yeah, this place is messed, man. This place is messed. Wildman's mom, how are you? Thank you to Beverly, Jay, Area 53, and Simon in Australia for the super chats. Greatly appreciate the love and support. Don't forget, you can shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. We do not have ugly swag, people. No ugly swag. We have Daniel Allen Jones. We're talking Bigfoot next on Spaced Out Radio. My name is Dave Scott. Always appreciate you tuning us on in for the weird and strange, the nightly fix that you need. Reminder to all of you that if you miss portions of this show or others, you can always check out our free archives on YouTube or any major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Let's bring back Daniel Allen Jones. We're going to switch from pterodactyls over to Bigfoot now. Now, if I'm correct, and please correct me if I'm wrong, it's more along the northern borderline of Texas where the Sasquatch are seen, correct?
Well, since Texas is sort of an odd shape, the way we delegate North Texas and South Texas is all kind of contrived because of the way it's shaped overall. But North Texas, not necessarily the Panhandle area, but over Northeast Texas and especially East Texas. Many people don't realize all of East Texas, from going east from Austin over through Houston all the way over into Louisiana, Arkansas, and up north into Oklahoma. That's all an enormous wooded area. You have the Big Thicket, the Sam Houston National Forest, the Piney Woods. And so this connection that is really interesting, my buddy and colleague Lyle Blackburn refers to the Caddo Triangle, which is, like you're saying, a concentration of activity where through this connection between Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, and Oklahoma all have something that people are describing in different regional terms that seem to be indicative of what we call Bigfoot. And I think it's really fascinating to consider that whether it's the same type of creature that people refer to as the Sasquatch of the Pacific Northwest up in Northern California and Oregon and Washington, or even up toward you in Canada, it's really important to see that, maybe these are similar, maybe they're the same, maybe they're all different. I think that it's important to see that, just like any other species, there are different variations, different breeds, and in some way, that's going to be something that we might find in known wildlife already that can possibly be an effect of what we're seeing with the variations and the variety of accounts given when it comes to what we call Bigfoot. So yeah, I would say Northeast, the eastern side of the state and beyond is one of the most big areas of concentrated activity. And you don't really have a lot out over in West Texas because it's more of a desert. And so, it might not be something that creatures covered in hair need to stay in. But hey, it's one of those things that make us wonder, is that a quality of a natural animal?
Right.
Is that something that we're seeing in a way that is reflective of the environment? Or are there reasons why we sometimes do have those one-off encounters where you have some sightings out where you would otherwise never suspect something like that to be? So again, I think it's a combination. And I think that we use that term Bigfoot to try to describe something that seems amorphous, but kind of fits the a description of a person, a humanoid type creature that's covered in hair. And from there, all the details can vary. But overall, I do think that there could be something to it. I think it moves beyond just being curious to compelling, and in some cases, very convincing. I think that it's important to see that, some people feel very affected by their encounters that they otherwise never intended on having. And that other people go out all the time attempting to contact or in some way elicit or evoke response. And I think it's important to see that, most of the time the people I've talked to have come forward to share about something, they weren't out planning on this. And I think it's important to see that, sometimes those interactions take place in a way that does gain attention. And so talking to some of the people in the Bigfoot community, and in the greater cryptozoological community as a whole, you find that there are stories that persist because of the ideas of it being charismatic and having a sense of sensationalism, not because it's just fake or it's not fake, but because of how media and things can carry an idea beyond just a small pocket of people. And a good example is the Patterson-Gimlin film, in a way that has now served as the iconic frame 352 picture of what everyone sees as Bigfoot. And just because of that alone, it doesn't necessarily reflect only on the video of it being legitimate or not, but how we understand an icon like what is Bigfoot even really supposed to be, right? So I would say that when you have this group of sightings in something like East Texas, and it being a completely wooded area, but not so many like up in the plains and the Panhandle down south, you have some, and there are cases in Mexico, but it's something that I would say is important to see that, all of these factors, where these had taken place, where there are pockets of remote wilderness that many people don't realize, like Texas has huge forests. You could set it next to on a map up to Oregon or Washington, and it's like East Texas covers a big part of that. And so I think it's something people don't expect, that, if they're not from here, they'd have been here, that Texas is all tumbleweeds and open, deserts and plains, but really we have everything. And it's important to see that can affect the way that life and creatures migrate and change areas. And perhaps they're not just staying in one place. And perhaps it's not just the same old creature. It could be a family. And I think it's amazing to consider if there are Bigfoot creatures out there, or people, or whatever these could potentially be, even if they are just animals or a species with no metaphysical capabilities, like even that's still amazing. Even being able to know that we have the opportunity to discover new wildlife should be amazing. It shouldn't only be amazing if it's like a portal jumping, dimension traveling, hairy alien. Like that's wild and awesome, but also like, hey, why not just, there also can be new primate species or new other completely different unknown things that, are in no way magical or whatever it is, but in some way can help us learn about how creatures can be so remote and elusive without relying upon the idea that it requires some kind of magical ability. So I think that people describe all kinds of things, and I'm not discounting that people are under the impression that those things are happening. But
have you ever seen?
I've never claimed to have seen any cryptids. I'd say that, Bigfoot would be amazing. I don't know, how, anything would be. It's hard to know until you're there. But I do try to do what I can to be ready to photograph something. I have my phone. I can pull out and pull up the camera. I train myself to do that on normal wildlife. I think anyone has the opportunity. You look up in the sky, you see a bird. You look over, you see a wild animal or something, whether it's a cat or a dog or whatever it is. It can be an opportunity for you to be prepared as best you can be, because to be honest, there's no telling what's going to happen. But if you're a little bit prepared to at least know you can pull out your phone or do something or have someone else there, I think we can train ourselves to be able to do that in a way that's helpful to document an experience. And I think it's also important to see that, like, people are unfortunately interpreting whatever it is in some way that can be misidentification. And that does account for some things. I don't think it, again, accounts for all, just like UFOs. I don't think that all Bigfoot sightings are all bears. But I do think that sometimes people see things and they don't know what it is. And things can be, taken out of context. So I would say that it's important that we can at least do what we can, and that we have all eyes that we can on something. It's like some people don't want to work with scientists or academics because we think that we like to blanket statement and say that they're all trying to hide the evidence or something. But I mean, most people I've talked to who are either involved with being involved with parks, any type of discipline of any zoological discipline, whether that's dealing with like wildlife biology, or any of these people would absolutely jump at the opportunity to have hands-on with something like this. The overall idea sometimes is that, that there's this big conspiracy to hide the existence of something. And I'm not saying that isn't happening, but I would say that, like, most people I've talked to and the general people involved with these institutions or disciplines is that they would love for these things to exist and would be the first people to want to help like substantiate these claims. And if there's not, if you show something to somebody and they say, well, you could have something there. If there's something we could follow up on, we need to be able to give people an opportunity to share it in a way that's not immediately going to be disregarding. I just think that it's easy to jump to technobabble in a way that like accounts for things we just can't explain. So it must be interdimensional, when in reality, like that's just another word to make it more mysterious, that we just really don't know what that means. If it's doing something that we don't understand, it's an unknown. And I think that if we use words that further a mystery of something, it can complicate our real understanding of it, and in place make it more suitable to our satisfaction as people who are just like, maybe really into it, to say that it must be able to do this because that's what it looks or seems like. But yeah, I don't claim to have any sighting of my own.
What's the best story you've covered?
Well, I would say, when it comes to Bigfoot, I'm honored to really have spent some time with Bob Gimlin. And I'd say regardless of, and this is where it's interesting because people want to talk about all the different aspects of the existence of something, even like Bigfoot, based upon all the supposed evidence, anecdotal or otherwise, whether it's physical trace remains, hair, scat, blood, potential DNA examinations, tests, or projects that have happened, of which all I'm, somewhat aware of in a way that there's been discourse about, that there are ideas of there being unknown primate, hybrid, what all you have that, people talk about. I've been fortunate to come across in some way. I would just say that overall, other than vocalizations, eyewitness testimony, the idea that perhaps there could be other technological advantages, photographic, video, anything that we can use technologically to try to substantiate a lot of these claims, we have a better opportunity now to ensure that this can be something that we can verify more than ever. The challenges and question is like, why haven't we? It's almost the Fermi's paradox for Bigfoot. If thousands of people are saying that they're a Bigfoot, where are they, right? And so I think it's really important to see that the way that most people in general in society know about Bigfoot is thanks to the recording and capturing of film that we now call the Patterson-Gimlin film, of which Roger Patterson, now and for a long time having been deceased, and his companion that day, Bob Gimlin, who is still alive in his 90s, has told about the recording of that footage from 1967 in Bluff Creek, California. And I've been to the film site, and I've been able to interview Bob Gimlin about what he says that happened that day. And I think that most people have no idea. And even what he says, I don't know. I would even say, like, I'm skeptical, not because I'm disregarding, but because I'm curious. I can't really know because I wasn't there, but I can at least talk to the people as a firsthand witness to a claim, what they say, how they respond, what it evokes within them. Bob seems to be sincere about what he says. And if some people who say that he's a liar say he's a liar because of this and that, I'll listen to why they say that. I don't have to agree or disagree, but I think it's important to know all angles. And I think the most interesting Bigfoot case that I would say, sometimes you hear people talk about they saw one, they almost shot one. I've talked to many people who live in Texas who say they've seen one unexpectedly. And those are all very interesting encounters. But to say that, I was fortunate to have the opportunity to do a number of different video interviews with Bob Gimlin about his time there in Bluff Creek, what his impressions are on the field of cryptozoology, what we can do in society to help be more aware of the possibilities of the existence of Bigfoot and other creatures, and getting the input of someone who does have a firsthand witness claim, I think is important because of not only his claim alone, but the associative nature of the film that we now utilize as an icon for this whole subject and the whole idea of the phenomenon of Bigfoot. So that has to be, and I would just say, not to try to rank them in any real way because they're all just, I'd say, helpful and informative. But I've talked with and interviewed and I've gone on an expedition with Ron Moorhead, one of the people who claims to have captured probably one of the most severe vocalizations, I would say, the claim of vocalizations that we hear in the so-called Sierra sounds. And so that's really interesting to know that, that these ideas of certain qualities of multimedia play a role in our own cultural concepts of this phenomenon can also be differentiated from the reality of the phenomenon. Many people discount the Patterson-Gimlin film as being a legitimate subject rather than a person in a costume. And they can do that. But sometimes they say that doesn't mean I don't think that Bigfoot's a real thing. So I think that it's more that it insinuates the reality of a creature rather than the creature itself. I think it implores people to look beyond the actual film to know that there could be something else to it. And I would say that the Patterson-Gimlin film has been an opportunity I've had to look into personally.
Right.
And it's really interesting.
I got to tell you, though, I believe it's real, not just because of the way it moves. I think everybody, is looking for the muscles on the creature, the way it walks, its stride, it's everything. But let's just be realistic for a second here. The easiest answer on this is Patterson and Gimlin back in the day, knowing how conservative people were around 1967, aren't going to sew a pair of boobs on a costume. And, I've heard the arguments where people have tried to claim that, it's just the suit is too big for the person and it's pushed down to make it look like it has breasts. No, it doesn't. Those look solid memories as memories could be. And, we can laugh at that subject and I find humor in it. But the reality is people of 2025 or 2020 or 2010 or 1990 are looking at it from that period's perspective. They're not looking at it from a 1967 perspective when women in many states were getting their bathing suits measured at the local beach or swimming pool. I mean, we have to look at the way life was back then in order to really study it.
Yeah, I think it's putting things into perspective culturally, which is a big part about why I think it's important to emphasize that. It's something that, like you're saying, many people take for granted. We look at things through our own cultural lens in the current kind of paradigm. And now, thanks to a lot of things like enhancements and analysis that's done on this and many other films, we can glean insight into some of the details that weren't otherwise available. Like, for instance, many people will say, and I've shown a picture of the location. I was grateful to be able to take part in an expedition to Bluff Creek with the Bluff Creek Project, who have mathematically mapped out with precision the original location, which is very inaccessible unless you have the right kind of vehicle. And that's now, considering, like you're saying, back in, over half a century ago at this point, in 1967, that they had people. And again, I don't say it's impossible because I don't want to just completely throw that out, but I would say the improbability of those types of things for what kind of payoff to think that, you have someone come out there in a suit that has to walk around miles out in this wilderness area to do a few seconds of film, and to think that it would have completely been unknown, other than it just fortunately being in the right place and being able to kind of be handed off and shown to the world over time to garner such attention. The unlikeliness of thinking that it would have amounted to anything is a difficult situation for the whole idea of this being kind of orchestrated. Now, it's not impossible. There are a lot of challenges. And I would say my buddy Daniel Perez has put together a monumental piece of work to showcase a lot of the different things about the Patterson-Gimlin film that no one's ever really seen before. And again, it puts things into perspective, going out to locations, going to places that you can actually look at in your own way that are often discussed on the internet. And so I think that what I find is important is that not only does it put things personally for me, into perspective, but I can do what I am able to share that in a way that not only looks at it as an investigative case, but to also be considerate, like you're saying, Dave, of the cultural aspect of the ways in which we're interpreting things with our own understanding and our own technology now and what we can do. So I don't think that any of the sophisticated enhancements with AI are legitimate when it comes to this film. You can only do so much to enhance grainy film. It's not video. The type of film can be zoomed in. It's going to remain blurry, but to do artificial enhancement will create artistic interpretation that doesn't actually exist, and people will misinterpret that as a real thing. And I think that can be very misleading, and maybe not even intentionally so. But I would say that after doing many examinations and in-depth analysis with Dr. Jeff Meldrum, professor of anatomy and anthropology at Idaho State University and a member of the Relict Hominoid Inquiry, along with Lauren Coleman of the International Cryptozoology Museum and Cliff Barackman of the North American Bigfoot Museum, and many of these different people who I've had the personal opportunity to interact with and examine their personal analysis of this entire film is, I think, made it move the needle past just curious and compelling, but almost convincing, like you're saying, with so much detail, it makes us wonder. But I'd say that even if the film is fake, and just playing devil's advocate here, even if it is, I don't think that means that the entire Bigfoot phenomenon is also fake. I think that, it would be amazing to think that after all these years that it somehow is fake, because it stands as the baseline for videographic evidence when it comes to Sasquatch and Bigfoot in such a way that, very few things compare. And there's so much fakery now that it's easy to use AI, it's easy to use CGI to fake things. And people often get excited about footage that surfaces on the internet and say, look at this, or here's this. And people don't share the source. They don't have context. Things get very lost and muddied up in the noise. And I think it's important we do what we can. If we're going to share things, let's source the origins. Let's see what we can do to provide context. Where's this coming from? What can we do to work better together to provide that supportive network for people to know that we need to raise the standard of awareness when it comes to these things in a way that, we're not just sharing sensational videos or media online, but that it can actually help overall to show that, we can improve the quality of information as well.
Daniel, we only got about a couple minutes to go here. Do we know where the original Patterson-Gimlin film is right now?
I have been told personally that Roger Patterson's wife, Patty, has a copy, and that a few other, or an original, or has a copy of an original, and that somehow things have wound up in different places. It could very well not even exist anymore. I know several people who have great renditions of it, and some people who claim that there's additional footage. But I would say overall, that information is going to be very difficult to track down, because it sounds like the owners of the film within the family have to be contacted for its use commercially or in any legal way, which often doesn't happen at all. And so the people who have copies and then copies of copies will end up being able to see little granular marks and burn marks and things that often get misattributed to things within the film, like potential other Bigfoot or something going on. So it's really difficult to know, but there's been, word about things online in various groups like the Coalition for Critical Thinking and Bigfoot Research. And so I think that some people have described there being an original or even a copy of original found in like Florida. But if Patty Patterson doesn't have it, then I would say no one has it, or that no one knows where it is, or it's been gone forever. And but despite that, even if that isn't the case, there are some copies that I think are in good condition. My colleague Jamie Wayne of the Bluff Creek Project has some really good condition reels, and other people I think have them in their possession as well. And I think that's maybe sometimes the best we can do at this point.
Tell everybody where they can find your information. We got about a minute to go, and I'm so thankful that we finally got to do this, Daniel. We definitely will do it again, my friend.
Absolutely. Well, I'm very well accessible on any social media, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, X, and I can be also found on my YouTube channel, The Vortex. I really enjoy being able to work on various projects, as I am right now with A Legend from Aurora, Texas, as we mentioned earlier. That right now is going to be a research project that will be made into an archive of information with an encyclopedia database. It'll become a physical publication to follow. But the other work that I'm doing, the ethnographic work, to be able to share about the cultural aspects of both ufology and then also cryptozoology, as we've been talking about, will be to follow that as well. And I'm fortunate to be able to work with so many great people, including yourself, Dave. And I appreciate all the work that you do to collate and bring everyone together. So, I'm very much appreciative of everything you're doing and the opportunity to share with you guys here. So thanks. I'd be glad to continue the discussion.
Danielle Jones, everybody. Coming up next, we got Swamp Dweller. The Jackie Harmon will join us for the Cryptid Report. Stay tuned. Hour 3 is next.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with your host, Dave Scott.
All right, buddy. Thank you very much. Appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks so much, man. It's been great here. I'm gonna grab a quick screenshot of us here on the while we're both together. Awesome.
Right on.
Cool, man. Well, thanks so much, man. We'll stay in touch. I know you gotta keep the show going, and I commend you for all your great work, man. And yeah, again, just appreciate the opportunity.
We're gonna do it again. I promise you.
All right, man. Look forward to it, and we'll stay in touch.
All right, Danny.
Right.
Take
care.
Hello, Jackie.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good.
Good. I'm just going to step away. I thought I'd bring you in because I know you love the audience.
I do love the audience.
Jackie's hair looks good tonight, people. You guys swoop over Jackie's hair. I'll be right back.
Jackie brushes it right before she comes on with this comb. I'm super fancy. Hi, guys. I was listening at the end of the show, and I didn't get to catch the entire thing, but that guy that was leaving, Daniel, seems like a very, very sweet person. So if you're still watching, hi. Hi, guys. I love seeing all you guys on here. Jackie is super tired tonight. I'm not going to lie, but I'm hanging in there. I have been helping my family build a very nice shooting gallery for my sister's business. I told them tonight when I showed up there, I'm positive you're trying to kill me. Because I am worn out. But I am here. I am here. Hanging in there. I had coffee earlier, so now watch, I'll get off here and then I won't be able to sleep. How's everybody doing tonight? Yeah, I'm not down with the cartwheels. More like staring at the back of my eyelids. I am good to go. Good to go. Good to go. Yep, a shooting gallery. It is actually, if anyone's ever been to like a Disneyland, Knott's Berry Farm, or anything where you go up and you shoot the stuff and then you hit the target and then something either pops up or moves, or that's what we're building. These things are insanely expensive, I have found out. Interesting enough, we had a guy. I wasn't there. I was on my way over. I was picking up coffee for everybody. And a guy, just random guy, shows up, goes up into the store. It's a 2-story. The gallery's upstairs. And he is apparently I don't know if he's like super well known, or I don't know his name. I'm trying to remember if I can remember his name, but apparently he shows up out of nowhere and asks my family if they're all ghost hunters. And my sister's like, no, but my sister is. And he's like, well, what are you guys doing in here? I saw this sign outside talking about the shooting gallery, and lo and behold, that's what this guy does. And he's building one in a place called Ghost Town, USA, somewhere in Texas. So if anybody on here knows about that, I'm really super curious to find out. I was going to look and see if I could remember his name. I looked him up earlier. Let's see if I can find it. I'll have to get my sister to tell me again who it was. I can't remember, but apparently he is a very well-known ghost hunter and also builds these shooting galleries on TV. I mean, like, how weird is that? This random dude just shows up to my family store, and there you go. It's a weird situation. So, yeah, it's in Temecula, California. If anybody's wondering where it's at, it's old town. I'm tired. I'm so tired. Old Town Temecula Mining Company and Mercantile is the name of the store in Old Town Temecula, California. And the shooting gallery is called oh gosh, I'm so tired. I'm drawing a blank. What is the shooting gallery called?
The shooting gallery?
Yeah, we're talking about we're building a shooting gallery.
Cool.
I don't know why I'm drawing a blank what it's called. Hold on, I'll look it up because
We
now
got 20 seconds here, Jackie. And while you're thinking of that, Swamp Dweller is about 2.5 minutes. And then we will bring you back on.
Okay. I'll tell you guys then.
Thank you tonight to Beverly J, Area 53, Simon Times 2, and Deborah Rooney for the super chats. Appreciate the love. Here we go. Here we go with the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We got a busy hour for you as we got Swamp Dweller coming up and then Jackie Harmon with Crypted Report. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam is set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Oblictation. Oblictation is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as a clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Let's head to the swamp.
Hello and welcome to Spaced Out Radio's Swamp. I'm Swamp Dweller, and tonight I'm going to take you on a mystic journey of the unknown, sharing tales of monsters, legends, and nightmares. Welcome to the Spaced Out Radio Swamp. Hello, Swamp Dweller. To start this off, I'm a 29-year-old man, and 3 times a year I head up to Georgia in the mountains to camp, fish, and have a great time. But after my last trip, I doubt I will ever go again. I had been super excited the week before. I was to head up to Georgia, and when the day finally came, I could have died with happiness. I loaded up my dog, Buddy, and all of my gear, and started the trip. About an hour into my trip, I saw a road that I've never been on before. I decided I would take it and just go down for about an hour, since I was ahead of schedule, and then eventually it would go back down to the main road. I lost track of time, and before I knew it, the sun was setting. I grabbed my gear and Buddy, and we hiked out about 10 minutes before finding a nice clearing in the forest. I set up camp and looked around my camp. I saw a small man-made trail leading into the dark trees and decided that me and Buddy did need to take a walk. I grabbed my walking stick, Buddy's leash, and a headlamp, and we headed on to the small trail. I knew something was wrong when I couldn't hear a single insect or animal. Me and Buddy stopped at a little creek when I saw something terrifying. 2 eyes reflecting off of my headlamp. This thing was tall, 6 or 7 feet, and the eyes were too big to be human. My dog was usually very protective of me, but instead of barking or doing something, he whimpered and peed on my leg. I've never seen him act like this before. He's seen bears before and has scared away mountain lions and squared up with many other animals, but has never peed in fear. As Buddy kept whimpering, I felt terrible, like this thing hated me, and it could rip me to shreds if it wanted to at any given moment. Then it made the scariest noise I have ever heard. It sounded like a maniac screaming. Me and Buddy bolted back to our camp. In our camp, I could still hear the thing. I was absolutely not staying here. I packed up the camp as Buddy stood watch. We ran to my truck and got the heck out of there. I went straight home and didn't sleep that entire night. Later, I looked up on the internet what could have made that noise, and nothing I could find came close to it. I really don't know what that was, but there's something weird in the woods of Georgia.
Thank you to Swamp Dweller for another creepy story, short but sweet. If you want more just like that, head on over to his YouTube channel, Swamp Dweller, and check him on out. They're all free. Just hit subscribe, ring that bell. Let's welcome in Jackie.
Oh, hello, Jackie.
Hi, everybody. How you doing?
Jackie Harmon is here for the Cryptid Report. You know, you've been away a little while, and we gave you
Yep.
some time off because, you know, you're in California. You were being affected by the fires there. Thankfully, you still
Yeah.
got home, and everything has turned out good for you.
Yes, it has. Thank goodness, because we have yesterday, as a matter of fact, we had another one really close to my house. So that was kind of scary. But I was actually gone during the time that it was here. So I found out about it kind of midday and it really freaked me out. But we're good. We're golden.
Good. Good.
Yeah.
I want to talk about
Yeah.
sounds as we
Talk
get
about
into
who?
the cryptid aspect of everything. Let's talk about sounds. Because when you were at Mount Adams, and you've done also hundreds of other expeditions into the forest and everything, it's
Mhm.
the sounds of the forest or the sounds that are not there that really define whether or not you are in an area of high strangeness. Now, for a lot of people who don't know, when you go into the forest, one of the things you were taught early, if you learn from people who have a lot of experience, is be aware when everything goes quiet.
Mhm.
When everything goes silent, you know there is something around that, and it's not a deer, it's not a rabbit, it's something usually predatorial that is around you. What did you learn about sounds when you started going into the forest?
Well, pretty much the identical thing that you're saying. As you guys, most of you guys know, I started doing stuff like this at the age of 4. So that was something that I remember being taught, pretty much like on day one, is you always have to be aware of your surroundings, and teaching the sounds was, to me, it is probably my very first memory of being out there. That's exactly what my dad would take time to teach me about, because not only did I go out as a very young child looking for, Bigfoot and whatever else might possibly be out there, but I had to learn the sounds of other animals and, how to understand the difference of them. But I do remember feeling like, when things went very silent, that you are probably in more danger at that moment because something's around. You're probably prey at that very moment. Something strange could be happening. So I do remember feeling like, always when things go dead silent, something major is happening.
And then there is nature's security alarm, which are the chipmunks and
Birds,
the squirrels
the squirrels, the frogs.
that will absolutely go off crazy. And this is why a lot of predators don't go after big predators, that is, don't go
Mhm.
after squirrels and chipmunks, is because there's a respect factor there, right?
Yeah.
There's a
As
respect
a matter
factor.
of fact, you had just mentioned us being at Mount Adams, and I remember specifically right before things went really crazy, there was a bird, and I don't know the name of this bird. I just know the sound of this bird. I should learn the name of this bird. But it is a bird known for basically warning other animals around, other birds. You look amazing. And so this bird it'll make this one specific sound. It's like a warning. It's just a warning to other animals and birds around. And it was going off like crazy right before we started having activity. And I specifically remember telling Lee there, um, that's a warning sign. That's a bird, and that's a warning, like chirp or whatever it is that it makes. And I remember him saying, like, oh, that's interesting. And then crazy stuff started happening. So yeah, I very much believe in like the animals there, they know what's going on. They're very aware of their surroundings. And a lot of people don't pay attention to those things, but they can tell you a lot. They are telling you a story of what's going on around you.
And they're also forewarning other animals not to come around you,
That's right.
because here's one of the things about Sasquatch. I've heard Sasquatch in the what we call the samurai chatter.
Mhm,
I've heard the wooing. I
mhm.
have not. I think we have heard, and I'm not going to be too convinced of this when I say this, but I think we have heard where it has mimicked other creatures of the night,
Oh,
other
yeah.
birds like owls and things
Even
like that.
people.
I've never heard that. What have you
Yeah.
heard?
Okay. Well, the one that sticks out to me the most, and we have also associated this with Mindspeak as well, but years ago when I was with my dad, there were two other people with us, but they were absolutely too far away for me to hear anyone else besides my dad. My dad and I were standing in one location, and then we heard something very strange, and we couldn't quite tell because it sounded like it was coming from all around us. And he said, "I'm going to walk about 50 feet that way. You stay right here, and let's see if we can tell where it's coming from." Well, as soon as he got exactly where he needed to go, I heard my dad call my name like it was right behind me. And of course, I knew he wasn't there. No one was there. And he was too far away. Now, if my dad had said my name is in the distance, I probably would have heard somewhat of an echo coming from the area we were in. And that was as clear as it can get. It was mimicking my dad, his voice. And the weird thing is, like, okay, growing up, and I don't even know if I've ever even told you guys this before, but my dad called me Bo. Never called me Jackie or Jax. I grew up with him calling me Bo. And so as soon as it said Bo in my dad's voice, I just sort of kind of stood there and turned like, okay, I know exactly where that's coming from. It's coming from my right side, but it's like as if he's like, is this close to me where my hand is, like literally next to me. And I just stood there for a minute and I thought, well, I'm going to see if it says anything else. And then I asked him, I called out to him and I said, "Was that you?" And he said, "What?" And I said, "Did you just say my name?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Well, I just heard you, specifically your voice, call me and say Bo. No one else in the world calls me that." So
That
it was
is
very interesting. That was the one memory that really sticks out to me. Now we had heard prior other people's voices and names being called out at different locations, but it was other family members where they'd be walking and they would have like the following, where they could hear the footsteps next to them, but could not see anything. They'd walk, they could hear them walk. They'd walk and hear the footsteps. And then somebody would call out their name, knowing that that person is off too far away for them to hear it. So it's something very it's an eerie feeling in the moment, but it makes you realize like how intelligent they are.
Oh yeah. That's what happened to us at Flight 21 when we were being followed, where we found where Samantha found the first footprint, and Merle picked it up first, when we walked, it walked. When we
Mhm.
stopped, it stopped. And it was much like it was tracking us
Yeah, it
as
is.
we were going, and didn't want to get too far ahead and didn't want to get behind. And as quiet as it was, on the ground, there are branches, little twigs that you step on, or it would step on, and you'd hear a little crack. Nothing
Mhm.
too big. It's amazing how quiet they can be,
Mhm.
you know, but that's nature. The one thing that we forget as humans is their feet are so padded and so soft that they can walk in any condition. I mean, I was talking to Mark Spender about this, my hunting buddy with me, and who was our armed guard out there the day that happened.
Mhm.
And he was saying, he's like, Dave, I've been walking through the forest, and I would sit down and maybe have some lunch, take a break. And next thing I know, I turn and look, and there is a bull moose 20 yards ahead of me. I didn't hear it, didn't
Mhm.
see it, didn't smell it, nothing. And you got to be
Yeah.
prepared in the forest for those type of situations.
Well,
And
yeah.
at this point, it really, makes sense that they are masters of their domain. They may leave clues, they're
Mhm.
not be stealthy like a ninja, but they do leave clues.
Absolutely. Well, it's a perfect example of the story that I told you about how, I'm laying in that tent and it's quiet. And you would think that if something that big would walk up standing right next to a tent, you would hear it walk up.
Yeah.
I never heard anything. Not one footstep. Nothing. No smell, no sound, no grunt, nothing. And all of a sudden, it's just right there. I mean, as close as that thing can get. And I was laying there with every sense of my being on high alert and nothing. It could have stood there all night if it had never actually hit the strap or rubbed the bottom of the tent. I would not have known it was there. It's so crazy to think about. I think about it all the time. Like, how did it get that close and us not here?
But you guys also, getting back to the sound aspect of everything, you guys also heard was it before the incident in the tent, or was it after the incident, in the tent, where you heard the talking, the whooping and everything?
Yeah, well, the talking and the whooping, we actually heard I heard the whooping prior and the talking actually started after. So it kind of came in these waves of like when we first got into the tent, it was really quiet. We thought we had just seen one standing at the end of this little dirt road, and when we approached it, it just disappeared. And we have this on the FLIR. You can actually see it moving, squatting, and then just disappears right in front of our eyes. So at that point, I think Lee was thinking like, all right, well, this doesn't want to show itself to us. Let's go, chill out and see if anything happens. And it wasn't probably within 5 minutes that activity was happening. And but throughout the day, we could hear interaction. Like I would whoop, you could hear something or a tree knock, but after the strap, when it snapped the strap on the tent, it immediately started. We could hear the sounds in the background. It was off to my left where the water was running. There was a little creek down there, and you could hear them interacting with each other. And it sounded to us we're guessing with the way we could hear it, probably about 6 of them. And we knew for a fact that they were both adult and juvenile because we had found the footprints prior in that same day, where there was one huge giant one that looked like male. I mean, could be female. I don't know. I mean, we don't know how big, but it was massive. And then there was a juvenile one, probably around maybe the same size as my foot, maybe probably a little bit smaller than my foot. So I don't know if that's a juvenile or maybe a teen age. But when they started talking, there was a lot of interacting. You could hear one and then the other. You could tell it was male, then female, and then younger. And then
How
you could tell it would be male and male.
Well, hold on a second here. How did you tell the difference between the male and female?
You could tell by the way the voice would change from a very deep, low way it would. It's just like as if how you and I are talking, like you could tell one had more of a feminine vocal, and then the male was much deeper. And then the way it would talk, it was like gibberish, but you could just tell the difference of the way it just changed. Like the minute the female started talking, I could immediately tell it was a female. And then you could tell the younger ones would talk, and it's like your child is talking, and you can't understand a thing they're saying. It's just these different tones. And so it's like you can tell this is a male, that's a male, that was female, that was a child. They were very distinct. And I could hear them very clear, like as if they were standing maybe about, oh my gosh, I would say 5 to no more than 7 to 10 feet max. They were very close to us. And then throughout the night, we have them on audio where you can hear them literally. I don't know if they're tracking or if they're just maybe looking or observing our camp, but they would walk around in a giant circle, and you could hear multiple of them. And at this point, you can hear the footsteps. And then they got very curious about all of our stuff in camp, and they would pick things up. We actually had this one tent, 3 tents total. One we were in that was off the ground, one that was on the ground that we used for like a dressing room and a restroom. And then we had one that was like netting that we had all our kitchen supplies in. And you could hear on the audio where they're going inside the netting one and touching the kitchen stuff. You can hear them touching the equipment. I even had this little harmonica I got from the Dollar Tree, and you could hear it. And now this is really funny because during the day I blew the harmonica and I said, you know, you know, and I was like, I wonder if they'll try to mimic that sound. Well, I never heard them mimic the sound when I was playing it. But the funny thing was, we can hear them pick it up and either breathe into it or blow into it. And you can hear the harmonica playing. So we thought that was crazy.
I
That
never
was a
thought
trip.
about Monica. I never thought about that. That's
Yeah.
that's a great one to go into my investigation this summer. Great one. You know, we got just about 45 seconds left before we got to go to break. How did it get into the tent? Did it figure out how to use the zippers?
Well, the kitchen tent that we had were actually just held together like one of those Velcro kind where you can literally just pull it apart and it just moves.
Gotcha.
So that one was very easy. Didn't have a zipper on it at all.
Gotcha. Yeah,
Yeah.
that would make sense. I mean, I know when we were there, both Samantha and Mark just got real intuitive feelings that there was 5 of them around us. There was the mom, the dad, the two kids. You could feel that you were being observed by multiple eyes
Oh,
at
yeah,
the same time.
absolutely.
And
You
then there was
definitely feel it.
the big guy, which we'll talk about next on Spaced Out Radio with Jackie Harmon and the Cryptid Report.
This is Spaced Out Radio and your host, Dave Scott.
Your hair is on bleak tonight.
Oh my God, it's so. I need a haircut. Today was washing day, and I forgot to wash because I had my day off today.
You forgot to
Don't worry.
wash it today?
It'll be ready to go for Vegas.
Got a plethora of moose in it. Is that the bomb stick?
Vicks inhaler keeps the nostrils clear.
Looking good.
Yeah. Oh, look at sweet Robbie G.
Hey, Rob.
Yep. We call him
Whoa,
Sweets
Nelly.
around
He said, "Whoa, Nelly."
here. Oh, Nelly. Now, is that for
Probably
your
looking at your due.
Scott? How you doing? Don't forget, you can join us in Vegas, May 1st to 5th. We're going to the Orleans. We're going to have some fun, and we're going to Merle it up. Merle is fun. Believe it or not, Merle is fun.
Merle is a lot of fun.
That's right, Chris.
I'm fun. I'll be there.
Me too. Teen.
We're going to have so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
we
going to
are.
be here before we know it. Time just flies.
Well, here, if you're going to you can do this too.
My
My hoodie isn't even touching.
green weenie. It looks like the green weenie.
Mm-hmm. Played Koala, how are you?
Got lots of new people in tonight. I saw
Lots
some
of-
new people on Element 115 earlier. It's nice to see a bunch of new people coming on.
VA Nessa, how are you?
Love you,
We got
Corey.
3 minutes. 3 minutes.
Should I put my hoodie on?
No. I got Ric Flair hair right now. 90s Ric Flair hair.
There you go. Part it down the middle. You got to wear that for 70s night. Yeah, we're getting all dolled up one night while we're there. 70s night. I might
Mhm.
come as like roller girl. Come
Oh,
rolling in.
Nice.
With my short shorts, my tube top.
I'll do the same.
My little rainbow socks.
I'll wear my Sasquatch socks.
Aw, you
You
guys
kidding
are
me?
so sweet to me.
I'm not even packing pants next time I go.
Oh,
I'm just
no.
bringing shorts. I'm just bringing shorts.
Yep, same. Shorts, dresses.
I'll bring one pair of jeans. That's it.
Now, I might bring something a little 70s sly for 70s night. I don't know what I'm gonna get yet. I'm already looking up like ideas for cute outfits. I'm going all out.
Look at
I'm
you.
gonna be like Farrah Fawcett.
Nice. Make sure you tease the hair out.
Yeah, I'm gonna get a haircut and it's gonna be all like feathered all over the place.
Mm-hmm. The only thing I'm finding in Vegas is I want to go to get it like a 2-hour just relaxation massage where I can like just sleep on the table. That's what I want.
Yes.
Then I'll be ready to go for the entire weekend.
Yes. That's a must. A nice massage and your toes painted.
Mm-hmm. That's right, Deb. I'm wearing my booty shorts.
We all are.
Mm-hmm. Yep. By the
You
way,
let
you
Tom sell it.
should all ask little Timmy James about his Dave Scott boxer shorts now. He can't wait to fart on my face. That's what he said. Thank you
Love
tonight
it.
to Nick Rooney with a hat trick, Simon times 2, Area 53, Jay and Beverly for the great super chats tonight. Very much appreciate the love and support. Here we go. In like 5 seconds. Hello, Jackie. Here we go with the final half hour of the Cryptid Report with Jackie Harmon. My name is Dave Scott. We always appreciate your being with us here. All Earth. Reminder to all of you that if you missed portions of this show or others, you can check out our free archives on YouTube or any major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Jackie Harmon is here. It's the Cryptid Report. We're talking about sounds in the forest and the big dude. There always seems to be one big dude that hangs out with a family, almost like they're bodyguards. Like everybody has that one uncle that, would do absolutely anything for you at any time. They're usually single. They're usually, tough. They're usually, have a good mustache, probably a mullet, and they drive a Trans Am from 1981. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This is the type of person that still goes to the gym every day and wears short shorts to work out.
I love it.
Yeah. So what is with this almost like this protector type Sasquatch?
It's funny that you would say that because I actually just watched a special about some people in the Bigfoot community actually believe now that because they're growing, and I think it's because more and more people are reporting seeing them and hearing about them really more than anything, is that they're reporting that the one Bigfoot in charge is actually now getting like challenged by these younger Bigfoot that are wanting to take over their family. And I just found that really interesting because I thought, like, okay, now what are we talking here? Like the main alpha is being challenged by the younger up and coming Bigfoot? I mean, what are we talking about here? It kind of makes you think about it. Like, I've never thought about something like that. But what made me really start thinking more about the possibility of that being true is that's kind of how they do it in the animal kingdom. They're out there like fighting over trying to get the female.
Yeah. We see it a lot, especially in lion prides.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I could totally see that happening. But I mean, I don't know if it would be happening in and this is just my opinion. I don't know if it would actually be happening in the Sasquatch world, considering that they seem very family oriented.
I think so too. I really
But
do. I feel like they run in families because they are very family oriented.
But on the flip side, you talk to a lot of First Nations people, up here in British Columbia where the Highway of Tears is. And many of the elders believe that many of those young women who were not taken by the mass murderers or the serial killers, but they were actually taken as Sasquatch's wives. And I was once told by an elder that one of the issues they always tell their ladies it doesn't matter whether they're way up north or down by the Washington state border, that young First Nations ladies should never go out alone at night or from the evening to night, because that's when Sasquatch is looking for a wife.
Wow. Yeah. That is something that I can see really happening because, the stories, like you said, with the people going missing, most of the time they don't find bodies. They're not finding oh, somebody killed somebody or that we found this body and then it goes back to the DNA of somebody else did it. So that is a possibility. And I have heard these stories growing up myself. My mom's side of the family is Cherokee Indian. So I had a lot of stories from growing up from the Cherokee tribe. And that's, something that I was actually talked about with as a child. And I remember hearing those kind of things that you got to be really careful as a woman where you go.
Mm-hmm. Like, I was surprised when I learned that researcher and former SOR host Jessica Jones, one of the first times she went out into the forest, this group that she was with literally used her for bait. She didn't know any better, but they used her for bait.
Wow.
Like they literally put her on a tree stump and then just said, sit there for a bit, and we'll monitor you in case something happens. Now, thankfully, nothing happened, but there
Wow.
have been incidents, Jackie, and maybe you've heard of them and share a story about where women have been tracked even during Sasquatch research areas.
Yeah. I think I've mentioned this before on the show. And this goes back as far as I can remember. My dad, my uncles, my cousins, the main people that of the Bigfoot group that I grew up with and going out with, mainly up until I was an adult and started going out with my own friends, that they would constantly say to me, every single time you're with us, we get way more activity. But I was the only female in the family who would go out and do this. No one else was interested, or, they just were afraid. They're like, I'm not going out and I'm not doing that. But my family never put me in that kind of a position to ever make me feel like I'm bait or uncomfortable in any way. But I didn't really grow up with that fear either. So I probably did some things I probably shouldn't have done, but I would always stay close to family and we always knew where each other were. But I can understand the possibility of that because being a female, I have had a lot of experience with different things that they'll say they never had. And they will constantly tell me more stuff happens every time you're with us than when you're not. And we would go to the same locations. So we're talking about research in the exact same location, like the same thing you do, where you keep going back. So and you're familiar with activity there.
Yeah, it is something that I think the familiarization of your area, your scent, you are, you're where you park your car. I learned that from a gentleman named Mike Johnson out of Colorado a number of years ago when I had him on the show, where he's the one who really got to me and said, look, man, you don't need to be chasing them through the deer trails. You don't need to be going 20, 30 miles on a trail trekking up and down a mountain to get there. If you think of them like they have an area, and if you can find that area, you do everything the same, because if you don't do everything the same, they will move away from you when you show
They will.
up. But if they learn your vehicle, learn the color of your vehicle, Learn what your vehicle sounds like. You park in the same spot. You make sure that your campfire is in the same spot. Your
Mhm.
lawn chairs are in the same spot. You do everything the same. And eventually their curiosity, they're like cats. I mean, if you put a little
Mhm.
laser beam on the floor, the cat's not going to do anything at first, but eventually its curiosity gets to
Mhm.
it and it will start trying to, slap down that laser beam. Sasquatch is the same way. Mike was telling me a story about a time where the week before he had lost his favorite red hat, didn't know where it went. And when they would pull into their camp area, they would stop, unload some of their stuff, then they would get out and then they would drive down the road further for a couple of miles just to make sure that there were no other campers around to tamper with their investigation.
Mhm.
And so they pull into the campsite, nothing is there. It's all blank. Everything is kind of the way it was. They throw a bunch of stuff out of the vehicle and they say, "Okay, let's go down the road." They come back, they turn to go into their campsite, and his red hat is now sitting right in the middle of the road.
Oh, wow.
They knew his vehicle. They
Yeah.
knew his vehicle.
Well, that is one way of communicating for them, that they're letting you know, we know you, we know you're here, we're communicating. So it's very interesting. That's not the first time I've heard someone say like something of theirs will go missing. They go back to the exact same location, and lo and behold, there's their item. So I do believe that they have certain people that they know very well, and that was exactly one of the reasons why my dad would take me to the same location multiple times. He would say, "They know us, they know you, they really know you well." And I think that's a big part of why I would hear my name. I think they're trying to let me know, like, we know you.
Yes. Why do you think it has to be so personable? That's almost like a human trait for a creature we know nothing about.
That's a difficult one because it's, when you grow up, like for me, growing up, being in that community, it felt like a very, very personal thing to me.
Mm.
And I have always had this Bigfoot connection of, I know you're there. I know you exist. I've seen things. I've felt things. I've smelled things. You just feel it. It's like you just have that sense of feeling. I think they have the exact same thing for us. And once they connect with certain people, I feel like it's just a part of them, and they like that familiarity. Like they like that you're there, and that, you have the same stuff happening, and that's just their way of kind of coming into your world, letting them know, or letting you know that, look, we're here, we know you're here, and we're willing to communicate with you, even if it's just a small gesture of giving this hat back.
I think you're right. I think you're totally right. And that's why, people, if you're going out into the forest and you want to actually do this, take your time, find a proper location, an area where you're not going to have dozens of people camping every weekend or someplace
Mm-hmm.
like that. And if you're in the backwoods, there's always roads. I mean, all you have to do is find an area. Jackie, correct me if I'm wrong, because I could be wrong on this. I think all you have to do is find an area where they've been seen before. That's it.
Yeah. Well,
There's an
like, perfect
area.
example of my spot, your spot. Like, okay, this is a perfect example. You've been there multiple times and you've had experiences. I've been there one time and had an experience. Okay. So I could go back again in the exact same location, and I guarantee you something is going to happen. They're not going to know I'm there, smell me, see me, and realize I'm the same person that was there before, and not come close. They're absolutely going close if they are, in fact, still in the same area. And I do believe that most of them basically like dwell in the same area for quite a while. Now, when it does get extremely cold, they might move down into, warmer areas, but they're not going to go too far down. They're going to stay pretty close to what they're used to.
And if they're used to you, they'll show up.
Absolutely. 100%. Absolutely. And I guarantee you, and I still believe that we should probably all go there as a group. Now I tell Lee this all the time. The accommodations are going to be different for me. I'm not even 100% sure if I will sleep there because of my circumstance prior. But if I do, it's going to be a different accommodation. I won't be in that same tent. I will never, ever go through that again. That's just something I don't ever want to feel, or even the thought of it. I don't want to think about it. It's really done something to me. It's messed with me in a way that I never expected. So I won't do it. But I'd be willing to maybe stay in like an RV, or, maybe just do an investigation and then leave the area and come back. But it's definitely going to be a different situation. And I know they probably think like, oh, we remember her, we remember that weird floating thing she was in. I don't know what they think it is, but I'm not going to be in that. So there will be a few things that'll be different, but I'll still be there. And I would definitely bring people that have good intentions of being there. But no, I think I can guarantee you this, no matter who does go with me, they're going to get it. They're going to have an experience.
What do you mean by good intentions? Let's go down the intention road.
Well, there are certain people that I believe that show up to locations for Bigfoot that don't have good intentions of when they see one. I know that I have heard people in the past say, if I ever see one, I'm going to kill it. Things like that. I would never spend 1 minute with someone like that. I would never want to harm a Bigfoot. I would never, ever, unless something was literally harming me or someone with me, I would never want to do that to something else. But I don't feel like their intentions are to harm us. But I do believe that they know right away if people show up with good intentions of why they're there or bad intentions of why they're there.
How far do those intentions go? Because I know the minute we turn on, and maybe it's my own intuition, but I know that the minute we turn up our logging road to go to our one spot, they already know.
Absolutely.
They already know we're on our way.
Absolutely. 1,000,000% I agree with you on that. I know they know before we come. I feel like they know the minute we're there. They instantly take us in with every sense they can have. Now, they might have more than us. Who knows? I don't know. Like, as humans, we don't smell things like animals. But I do believe that they have their senses are just so heightened that they can smell us from far away. They can sense us from far away. And we're not created like that. So maybe that's why I couldn't smell them. I don't know. But I feel like they know everything about us from the second we arrive. And I do believe they know our thoughts, our feelings, and our intentions of why we're there. And that's why I feel like they were curious about us, because they knew we were there because we're curious about them and we want to learn. That I would never personally harm them, and I feel like they felt the same way about Lee. So I just feel like that's why they show themselves to us and they come around us. Even if we don't see them, they're there. They were around us the entire time we were there. They were watching us the entire time. We just couldn't always see them, but I could feel it. And I told Leah that the entire time. I'm like, I know exactly where they're coming from. And the ironic thing was the exact I mean, literally to a T, the exact spot. I told him that's exactly where the first thing got thrown in, was that wood was in that exact spot, got thrown in from that exact same spot. I couldn't have been more dead on. And it's just a feeling that you have as a human. Like, that's our sixth sense of understanding that there's something else around us.
Question is, what is it? Is it a special power? Is it just natural intuition from them? What do you think?
I feel like they have a connection with us and with each other, that they give off a feeling of, I mean, it's definitely something more than I think that we're even under, as humans, that we understand. But we can talk about it, but like, it's hard. I think it's harder for us to comprehend. But I do feel like that they have something special about them, that it's like the mind speak. It's kind of the same thing with the feelings and the emotions. And because from the second we arrived, I told him immediately, before we ever walked away from the main camp where we just unloaded, they're here. I already feel them. We're surrounded by them. And that's just not me just standing there saying, calling out some BS to Lee. That is a true feeling. And like I've said before, I always take my shoes off. I ground myself, and I kind of mind speak, I guess, to them, because I'm telling them my intentions through my thoughts, and I'm putting it out there into the universe to them. This is why I'm here. This is what I'm about. This is how I feel. I'm welcoming you. I have respect for you in your home. And if you're curious about me, you're welcome to come to me. And I don't, come with any harmful intentions. And so I let them know what my intentions are. And I feel like that's a big help in letting them understand who I am as a human being.
Jackie, it's that time. Hard to believe that flew on by once again, as Jackie has decided to, hang out with us a little bit and
It's always a pleasure to be here.
Cryptid report down, as we got another 20 seconds to go. Where can people find you, Jackie?
Well, I'm also on Spaced Out Radio on Element 115 every Friday night from 8 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, or you can find me on Facebook at Jackie Harmon. That's JACQUEHARMON, or Jax_Harmon on Instagram.
Love it. Take it away, Jackie. And hello, Mr. Ron Bubblefoot Ball. Rocking in the background with Little Brother is watching. Bubblefoot is the official Spaced Out Radio. Rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening at work, at home, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight. YouTube, Twitch, LGAM, Facebook, Spreaker, LinkedIn, Space Travelers Club, and on X, hashtag Spaced Out Radio.
I know you're out there somewhere.
Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SLR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends,
we're watching.
we own the night. We need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the little train has docked for the night, but soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them too. Good night, everybody. All right, we're clear. It's clear. to the Spaced Out Radio world. I am not feeling very well tonight, so we are going to cut this one a little bit short. But I want to say a big thank you to Beverly J, Area 53, Simon with a hat trick, and Deborah Rooney with a hat trick of great super chats. Hi, Mama Catherine. We love you, my dear. Hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful night. Hi, JMJ12. And who else jumped in here? I saw somebody else. I have to say hi. Susan, how are you? And the big thing is tomorrow and Sunday, Sweet Robbie G, we call him Sweets around here, will be here for another great weekend of programming. I will see you on Monday night when my guest will be Lon Strickler for Strange Days for the final week of January. Hard to believe we're already there. We're like 3 months away from Vegas. Just over 3 months away. Oh, doesn't that sound good? Doesn't that sound? Jack, stick around. And to the rest of you, good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Hold on. I almost hit the wrong button there. Let's try that again. And to the rest of you, good night, everybody.
Stay healthy, my friend.
You too.
If you need bail money, give me a call.
Always, Dad. Take care.
You too.